Well, Dustin, we're here. We got through the short form. Now, this is always my favorite part, the long form. But before we dive into whatever we're going to discuss today, anchored around the topic of financial wellness, financial literacy, financial advising, can you give the audience just a brief background of yourself, who you are, what you do for a living now?
Yeah. So Dustin Eldridge, founder of Team Private Wealth Management. So multifamily office for NFL players, college athletes in other sports as well. But main focus is on football. Spent over a decade in wealth management, just growing my career. Worked with everybody who was trying to get out of debt at one point in time, all the way up to families worth over $1 billion. So kind of spanned the wealth spectrum, which is a unique perspective that I now bring to a population I feel like has been dramatically underserved for far too long and just needs a different type of advisor than they've traditionally had. So happy to be here, happy to drop as much knowledge as I possibly can to help as many people as I can.
Yeah, and I'll say the cool thing, right? We're friends. We've known each other for a couple years, and I want to take my hat off to you and tell you that I think the passion you have for doing this, we met, so everyone can understand, at a time where we were both focused on NIL stuff, particularly at a school up in Tampa, and you were the financial advisor for the college athletes, and we were the tax firm and the accounting firm for the college athletes. So when I see someone that has a similar passion for helping people that really need to understand these concepts, right? They're young, especially at the NIL level. Yeah. They're making money. They're making good money too, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to file their taxes. They don't know that they should, switch over to an S Corp, have the collective pay them into their business, right? And then on the side of saving and investing, that's where you come into play. So I really respect you because there's more people, in my opinion, in today's world that are looking at those as an opportunity. Well, we look at it as an opportunity just in a positive way, and I think people really look to prey on the fact that they don't know. Whereas one thing I noticed about you, and I told you as we finished the short form, is the way you explain things is so clear and concise. And most people don't take the time to explain, they just tell. Yeah. They tell, okay, I'm going to do this. And then you ask why you do this, and it's, whereas you, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it, and this is the reason why we're going to go down this path. The discussions on this podcast are for informational purposes only. I cannot predict and do not guarantee that you will attain a particular result from the information provided. You should always seek professional assistance before making decisions in connection with the topics discussed. So I want to start us off in this by looking at a receipt right here from someone that I follow on Instagram. He's in the lead generation world, and I literally, as Ben was getting ready for us to start recording, I was literally looking at this on Instagram, just scrolling. And this guy is in New York right now. I'm sure he's at a very nice hotel. He's a very successful guy. He'll probably listen to this at some point. But look at his breakfast today. He's got one American breakfast, which, probably eggs or a little buffet style, $49. Ben, if you could zoom in, that would be awesome. One granola parfait for $23. One admin fee, which I'm not sure what that means even, right? Administration fee for a subtotal of $87. Don't forget we have an 18% service charge, adding on $12.96 and a tax of $7.72, bringing his breakfast total to $107.68. As a financial advisor, what is your reaction to Jason's breakfast this morning?
Don't get breakfast in New York City. I guess the answer to that. Like, what is the admin fee? What is the 18% service charge? Not enough.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Like, what is the admin fee? I mean, but
I think that's to bring it into the room.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe.
I don't think so. No, I had room service this morning. We're in Dallas recording. My breakfast certainly wasn't $107.
Yeah.
And I had more breakfast than that, but that's the world we're living in today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, certainly this is an extreme extent, and I'm, like I said, successful guy. I'm sure he's staying at a nice hotel. But the reality is the prices are going up. Things cost a crazy amount. And to be honest, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you sit on. I think one of the most important videos in this campaign cycle came out last night. I'm not sure if you saw it, but someone on Trump's team set up like you would see at, I'm trying to think, like a fair at school, like a science fair. And it was literally all the different, they categorized it by different produce sections, right? Just like you have in the grocery store, but they're comparing the cost and price and how it's risen so drastically. I mean, that is the reality. But from your standpoint, what are you seeing, right? Like, what is the consensus? Are people saving? Are people spending? And I'll say this to preface it, you deal in a very specific industry with people that have a lot of money, but still, what are you seeing?
I think that people are, at this point in time, unsure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I see everything. People are still overspending because they have excess capital. I see other people who are scared out of their minds and are spending on nothing. And then everything in between. I think the biggest thing is there's just too much unknown right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, oh, this time is different. History, we're living in a different world. We're not. By the way, like if you were to go back and look at history and financial aspects of life, this has happened before. It's happened multiple times before. I think the difference that we experience today is how rapid things change.
Yeah.
Versus, something that might have taken a couple of years to change in the 1920s or 30s or 40s now takes like days or months. And so the change is so quick that people are just and I would say, we talked about this earlier off air, people are used to having information so quickly. So the unknown is very scared for everyone. So I see everything, all of which is not good. Like someplace down the middle is where you need to be. You need to live your life, but you also need to make sure that you're saving some of the money that you're making. So
and I would say, talking about the unknown, again, I'll go back a lot. I always do, to my generation, and we briefly touched upon this, but having the patience and the consistency to set yourself up for financial freedom or a stress-free life in terms of finances. Because I always say this, right? Everyone's version of success is different. Your version is different than my version, is different than Ben's version, is different than your NFL's version of success, because the way that I view success, it's broken down into different parts of success. What is true success to me? True success is freedom of time and financial freedom as well. However, other people might not necessarily care about going to a 9-to-5 job if they're making money and they're happy in that lifestyle.
Right.
But for me, I want the ability to create my own schedule, to be able to do what I want to do. And so I think success looks different, but for your clients, what would you say their idealistic goal of success looks like?
Well, I think for my subset of clients, it varies depending on which stage of their career they're in. For the NIL college athlete, it's maximizing this opportunity set, which looks so different today than it did 3 years ago pre-NIL. They're looking to maximize not only what they do on the field, but what they do off the field.
Yeah.
Which has been amazing, in my opinion. It's created more entrepreneurs out of athletes than ever before, because now they understand that like they have a personal brand and that is a personal business.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be way more educated. They're going to learn some life lessons along the way that we both know that they're experiencing, but they're going to come out of that with a great entrepreneurial spirit and understanding of what it means. So they're looking, hey, I've got a 4 or 5 year window. I'm just going to do everything I can to maximize this. You look at the other end of the spectrum that I really like to focus on is guys at the end of their career. What do they do after football? They're starting to think about that so much earlier than any generation of player before them. And the reality is they're also retiring with more money, like double, triple, quadruple anybody who's ever retired before. So they've got a lot more resources, but they're thinking about it earlier and they're dabbling in different things. But they're just trying to understand what do they do with their money? What does the next phase look like? And my subset, it's both, whether it's an NIL athlete, 4 to 5 year period, or a pro athlete, on average a 3 year career. Everybody's hoping for a decade.
Is that the average of an NFL athlete? 3 years.
3 years.
Short-lived.
Just at 3 years, which is just enough to get some of the benefits long-term from the league. So it's pretty short. So both are looking at, and even if you play a decade, it's short time period to earn all of the money that you'll make from this profession. And you need to start another career.
Where is the 3 years? And just, you know this. I'm not
Yeah.
a sports guy. I know you know that.
Yeah.
But in comparison to other sports, do you know where that lays?
It's a little short of most other sports.
Okay.
Yeah, basketball is like 4.5 to 5.5 years.
Okay.
Baseball's a little hard to understand because you've got one metric of a guy who makes it to the majors and then another for a guy who never makes it. And
Yeah.
because you could spend a decade in the minors, you won't make any money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really equate to like, so the majors, once you make it to the majors, they've got a little bit longer timeline, usually 5-6 years. And then some of the other sports are a little bit longer than football. Football is just the hardest to last in.
Yeah.
From a body standpoint, from a competition standpoint of the number of positions on the field and all of that. So yeah, it's real short.
Yeah. And I would say two things. The first thing is, in my family's line of work, which is, right, let's break it apart for a second. We have the tax resolution side of the business where people owe back taxes and come to us in a reactive mode and saying like, hey, oh my God, I owe this money. What do I need to do? And then we have the proactive side of our business, the accounting side, where we're doing traditional bookkeeping, payroll, tax preparation. We have, and I want to preface this by saying, because it's on point with what you said, that number is going down of the amount of pro athletes that once came in our office, first round draft picks in the NBA, that made an absurd amount of money and now have nothing. I mean, these people literally owe millions and millions of dollars to the IRS, but I am starting to see less of that. And I'm curious if you think that's because of these horror stories that we hear all the time of people going broke after they're done playing.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's been thrown in their face since the Broke documentary certainly broke it to like the mainstream in the early 2000s.
I don't even know what that is. What is
So
that?
yeah, ESPN, it was like rated before it became officially 30 for 30. They did this one documentary called Broke,
Okay.
which profiled several athletes that had, I think Antoine, I'm blanking on his last name, that was kind of a key athlete in that, but several athletes across multiple sports who ended up broke after, making $80 million plus in a career. And so I think that is a big part of it. But two things. One is more are becoming entrepreneurs, even pre-NIL, but now with NIL, that's producing a different mindset. But also, to be blunt, the money is so absurd now.
I know.
It's very hard to spend it on. Now, some still figure out a way to do it. But if you can make it to your second contract in any of the major sports, the money is so big that it's hard to not end up with still some of it left over.
Yeah.
So I think that's really part of the product is like they've heard these horror stories. There's so much money now, and they're ending up in just a better position as a result.
I think also what's very interesting to me is the whole influencer world stemmed from social media. But if you look 10 years ago, let's go back a little further than that.
20.
Yeah, 15, 20 years ago, they were influencers just in a different way. So now you talk about NIL, and where I'm going with this is in our tax office, I created a whole division of our accounting firm focused on influencers. But if an NIL client comes into our office, they fall into that influencer category because although they're getting paid from the collective, they're getting paid to push stuff on socials. They're getting a rev share of merchandise potentially, right? They're making their own products. So I think social media has been a tremendously big asset and help to sports players because they're able to monetize the business in another avenue rather than just saying, hey, I'm going to go on this Nike commercial or this Adidas commercial.
Well, I think you're pointing to it there. Like what social media has given them is they're in control of their brand and what messages go out. Before, they used to have to go to Nike, go to Adidas, go to a brand that was making commercials and producing content in the traditional ways 20 years ago. Now they don't even have to do that.
Yeah.
They can literally pull out their cell phone and just record a video.
Yep.
And so athletes now have the control, and that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like with NIL specifically, now they have control at an earlier age. All of this control teaches lessons in life. Whether you're an athlete or any, regular person, you're going to learn when you're in charge a lot faster than if you have to go to somebody else. And you're going to learn some good things. You're going to learn some bad things.
Yeah. And I think as well, the thing that pops into my head when you talk about that is this whole idea of not being able to spend the money as quick as they're getting it because the money is so extreme now. But I'm curious, in your opinion, do you think someone's social media following has an impact on their contract that they're getting?
I mean, in college, it certainly does.
In college, okay, yes.
Let's set that one aside for a
Yeah.
second. But college, it's dramatically impacted by how many followers you have. It's just the nature of the beast because a brand wants to know they've got reach. But from a professional level, I don't think that affects most athletes.
No, I agree, not most.
Most athletes, but at your top tier, I do think that has some effect on the value to a franchise.
Yeah.
I think certainly in a sport like basketball, that's where you see it the most, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the place where a guy like LeBron can walk into any locker room and not only change what happens on the court, but it changes the entire landscape of that organization.
Right.
And that's just a unique sport from that perspective. I will in turn say the other sport I think that is sort of underlooked, but starting to become more prominent thanks to somebody like Bryson DeChambeau, is golf. Is the place you can also really change
and
what
golf
you're
is on fire right now.
Exactly. And Liv sort of helped with this, right? If you had a personality and you had a following and you got an opportunity on Liv, all of a sudden part of what they paid those guys was based on that personality and that following that they have. I mean, just look at Phil. Like, Phil is not playing well, but they paid him a lot of money because he's Phil Mickelson and has a brand and has a following. And so I think in different sports, at the highest level, it has a major impact.
Yeah.
At the rest of the level, it doesn't have an impact on your contract, but it has an impact on what happens around your contract and definitely what happens after you're done playing.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for whether they're starting off in the NIL world right now, right? Or they're in the professional world, to have someone that you trust be managing the social aspect of what your perception is. And I'm not necessarily sure a lot of people have that. Again, I'm not in the sports world too much, but from what I see, it's almost as if you put someone in that position to run the social campaigns for you and you're the athlete, it's going to do a lot of good and positive for you, because now you're going to be able to focus on what you need to focus on to achieve the sports goals, right? You have someone that you've delegated to do these goals, but it also plays a role, like you said, into the overall aspect of how you're viewed. Because listen, there's some games that I do watch, right? Like certain games, some of the Michigan State games, some of the Lions, since they've been doing great. I've been really watching the Lions when it's in season. But you hear the commentators talking about certain things that happen socially, right? I think one of the biggest things we've seen is Taylor Swift. Look at the impact that Taylor Swift dating, oh my
Travis
God.
Kelce.
See, I'm not a sports guy at all, as you can tell. I'm also not a Taylor Swift person either, for that matter. But nonetheless, that the impact that has had. I mean, some of see, Bennett, see if you can find a number in which Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's relationship has equated in some form, however it is.
I think they did put out some stat you can probably find around
they?
viewership, especially on the female spectrum. And when you look at that, so when you look at a sport like football, what all sports are trying to do is what basketball has been doing for the last 2 decades, which is expand the footprint globally, which means more revenue for them.
Yeah, so how much money Taylor Swift brought to the NFL? This is USA Today.
125 million impressions. 448 million, worth about 9.6 million by social media items mentioning Taylor Swift and the NFL.
That's crazy. With nearly 450,
Yeah,
NFL
I mean, you can't understate that, and I would also say that so on the basketball spectrum, you can argue good or bad or indifferent, right, about their engagement in China, but that emphasis they put on it over 20 years ago is the reason why they're talking about this next potential next great thing. I can't remember can you look up the basketball player who played with the Team USA who's in high school? But they estimated his rookie contract is going to be someplace in the neighborhood of $400 million.
It's insane.
for his rookie deal. And a lot of that is because of this new media deal that the NBA signed, but it's because they have international fan base. So when NFL looks at how do we grow, that's why they're pushing to get into London, get into Germany, and grow internationally. But the only other way for them to grow is to get females to watch more of football.
100%.
And so it's genius. Cooper Flag. There you go.
17.
And so they did a comparison with his and LeBron's rookie deal, if you can find that, so we can talk about that specific. I think ESPN had put something together. But somebody like Taylor is genius for them. And obviously, I don't believe they planned it. None of that type of crazy conspiracy or anything like that. But it was exactly what the NFL would want leading into. And I've talked to a lot of people and engaged a lot of people around this women's flag football for the 2028 Olympics. There's a lot of money. NFL's put about $100 million into flag football specifically to really try to grow the female aspect of it.
Very interesting.
So all of these leagues are trying to find a way, how do you get more people to watch, which means more money for everyone involved.
Yeah. And what is your take? And you might have to be careful about what you say because of your position, but so much gambling is pushed around sports now. And we had dinner. This can be long-winded, but first let's see. Is this the comparison, Ben?
I keep getting just him playing with LeBron, but I'm trying to find a comparison here.
Okay, if you find it, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
But real quick, Ben, what was it called? Zach, shout out to Zach McKenna, head of the Brinks crypto division. What was it? Financial nihilism?
Financial nihilism, yeah.
So financial nihilism is the concept that, everyone of a younger generation now doesn't think they're going to make it. No matter, I'm not talking sports, I'm just talking the regular layman's person doesn't think they're going to make it. So what do? They look to gamble. They look for that 1 in a million shot. And that's why we're now seeing the society that's so much focus on sports betting, sports gambling. But I mean, again, you work on the opposite side where the consumer is betting on some of your clients, right? But how does that play a role into the overall society that we live in today in terms of the economy? What do you think about that?
Well, I no expectation you bring something up about that, but I'm reading Think and Grow Rich right now.
Okay.
Which is a book that was written in the 1930s. And one section talks about I think it's 28 ways to fail. And one of those 28 ways to fail it wasn't called that at the time, but was basically going and gambling, which is what caused the 1929 crash. Is people were literally gambling with all of what they had left on stocks, hoping it was going to make them rich and solve all of their problems, right? So I said this earlier, times are not different. This is not a 1 in a million situation. This stuff has happened before. And so I think if anybody is out there looking for a quick fix, it does not exist in any place. It doesn't exist in your career. It doesn't exist in your money. You have to find the long-term solution. You have to solve the real underneath the ground issues, the roots of the issues. Which is something that our society in America does a terrible job. If you even look at our healthcare system, right? We're not treating the real issues; we're treating the symptoms, and so
we're not even treating.
Yeah, So I think that's permeated so many places, but you can't find success in gambling. I mean, even the best gambler hopes for a 51% win rate, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a bad way to approach life. I don't see true gambling. What I see is in my space is too much money is being invested by athletes in private businesses that their buddies start, their relatives start, that just aren't good businesses to invest in.
Right.
That's where they're really gambling with their money. They think they're not gambling because they think they know the person, they know the business, they want to start a restaurant, but they're literally just throwing money away or just hoping that it works out. And people prey on them for that type of money and pitch them deals. So that's where I see the gambling. I don't see it in the traditional sense
right.
at the athlete level, but I would say that what has certainly permeated society for everyone else. Is you can't go watch any sports today without some sort of gambling aspect
Which
to
is crazy. I was even in the gym yesterday, and as you're watching, I forget what sports channel was on. Had AirPods in, but I would looked up, and on the sports channel, they're talking about what the book is, and like where I think, gosh, I wish I could remember, but I think it was like, where should you put your bet or something like that,
Yeah. Well, and I saw like the other day, some company is offering you to build your own parlay.
Yeah.
Like with as many things as you want to
Yeah.
combine across as many sports as you want to combine.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this sounds crazy.
Yeah.
So like you're going to build your own parlay, which is like 1 in a million shot it's going to hit.
Yeah, I just saw Ben. He just took it away, but 62% of Americans say they've gambled in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy number. And
12 months.
12 months?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a dyslexia. I should go to the school across the street.
Yeah.
But the thing to me is that I see people in my age demographic, let's call it, I'm 25, so let's say 30 and under, gambling with the money they don't have to gamble. So they're gambling because they think that parlay that is, $30 parlay with the chance to win $500,000, that's going to hit. Or if it does hit, right, that rush of it. I will say there's this very crazy story of my dad's high school best friend a couple months ago. I forget which golf tournament it was. Maybe you'll know. I think they were playing in Arizona, I want to say, and it got rained out, or it was California, and it like went a day, and then it got rained out for the rest of the time. So I guess it would be the scoring board stuck the same way. I guess that's the rule in golf. If it gets rained out, it just sticks with whatever it is. And he got them all right, and he won like $5 million off like a $30 parlay, and he's 18 or 19 years old. The crazier thing is one of the gambling sites, they tried not to pay him. And he actually bet the same exact parlay. Him and his friend bet the same one. They both won. I think his friend bet a little less, so it was a lesser payout. So he fought, got all his money. However, his friend settled with the gambling institution, with the book, because that's just what they did. They just squeezed him. He's a young kid. Seemed like his family didn't really have a fight, or I shouldn't say have a fight. They didn't know how to fight, right? They didn't. This kid's dad, my dad's friend that he grew up with, is a lawyer, so they just sent a legal letter and then he was paid. But the other kid literally settled for an undisclosed amount that's hidden under contract that they can't say. And to me, it's one of these things where those are the stories that are getting pushed. You have every big, pretty much YouTuber, influencer right now pushing some sort of gambling aspect, whether it's like a Prize Picks, whether it's this. And I think it's disheartening to me to see that, because people don't have the money to do that.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because I'm in the generation just ahead of you, and like our thing was more the keeping up with the Joneses. Like people were just buying stuff they just didn't need to buy because gambling wasn't legal,
right?
And so, sports gambling anyway, in the way that it is today. And so that took down parts of our generation, or the student loans, like I was an example of. Like it just caused so many issues for us. So it's unfortunate there's something like that, but it's just like student loans. If I was to think about it back in that day, it was thrown all in your face all the time. Oh, just go get student loans. Just go get student loans. Just go to the bank. Banks were advertising it. And so it's unfortunate that we allow things like this to happen. But also at the same point in time, like some of these states' economies are being held up or driven by gambling revenues. And you can't argue that your property taxes might go down as a result of it. Like there's other benefits. School systems might improve. There's other benefits to it. It's just, how do we find the balancing act?
100%. And the reason I even bring all of this up is to get to this point of the money that is spent on gambling could be the money that's used to invest or be saved for the emergency day fund, for the car fund, for the wedding fund. But instead they're gambling it because they think, oh, if I gamble it, I have a better chance of my return. And then you go down this rabbit hole and you just don't. I know you don't necessarily work with what I would say is the average listener of this podcast. But I think the concept is the same, right? That's why I brought you on.
Yeah.
That was one of the main reasons, because I look at you, you're an NFL financial advisor. So you are dealing with people that probably, and I'll say this is my ideology here is pre-NIL, because maybe some of those clients aren't hitting yet for you, right? You're just now getting them in the NIL stage. But they weren't making a lot of money in college, if hardly any money.
Yeah.
And now they got into an exorbitant amount of money. And it's like, okay, what do I even do with this? I think that exact same situation can be brought down to our listeners, where they're in college, they have no money, they're scraping pennies to get by. And then they get into society, they get a job for $50,000. And it's like, wow, now I have a lot of money, but also I have expenses. So the same concept to me is relatable to your clients as it is to the audience. And I think the one cool thing here is it's interesting because it's NFL, because it's the story of the sports players that go broke and you're helping them not go broke. So what would you say is a common theme or a conversation you have with your clients that you think would resonate with our audience as well?
I think at the most basic level, it's you have to have a budget. I mean, whether you're making $10 million in a year or you're making $50,000 in a year, you have to know how much you're spending every single month. Because if you don't start there, you have no concept of the money that you have left over to do anything with. Gamble, save, invest, buy a house. None of that type of stuff you'll have an idea if you don't budget. So that is the number one thing.
Yeah.
I think the other things that are, an athlete is like a regular person. And that's why my goal and why I launched my business on my own the way that I did is because I wanted to treat them like normal people, because they are normal people.
Yeah.
They just so happen to be public figures and make a lot of money in a very short period of time, but they have normal people problems. Like they don't know how to buy car insurance. They don't know how to buy homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
It's just they have extra zeros after what they might be purchasing versus what you might be purchasing. So a lot of the same problems, and most of it just stems from they don't know how much is coming in and going out every single month. And once you understand that, you can start to make a whole lot of life decisions after you get a good idea of your cash flow.
Yeah, well, maybe you'll send some of them to listen to the podcast.
Exactly.
Because I think that's another thing is when you get to a certain level, you delegate. It's an essential thing you have to do. If you want to be able to stay consistent and continue growing, you have to delegate in smaller tasks that just aren't worth the time value or the opportunity cost of you doing it. And I think insurance is a great one you pull out. I had a conversation with my neighbor in Miami. He's a 53-year-old guy. He lives directly next door to me. We talked on the balcony for, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. He had just moved in. And coincidentally, he parked right next to me in our garage. And he had a 488 Ferrari and a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. And he had a couple other cars coming in and out. And he was telling me that when there was flooding in Miami a couple weeks ago, his Rolls-Royce, it was a Bentley he had before that, he was driving, he made a wrong turn, he was trying to avoid the water, and then all of a sudden just the water took it and he jumped out the window and that was it. I said, oh, what carrier are you insured through? And he said, State Farm. I said, State Farm, great carrier. Not
for a Bentley.
Not for you, exactly, not for you. You need to look at something like Chubb. And he had no clue what Chubb even was, right? He had no idea that State Farm wasn't the right fit for him. He just had it because he's had it for years and he stayed loyal. But, now he's going to fight that claim. I guarantee they're going to try and find something because of what's happening in the insurance world to not pay that claim out. Again, I love State Farm. I have State Farm clients, a lot of them. The top 1%, I should actually say the top 0.1% of State Farm agents are some of our clients. And one of my businesses doesn't mean they're not a great carrier. It's just you have to pick what fits you right. And 53 years old, super successful guy, doesn't even know why he should not be insured through a certain carrier. So it's crazy because no matter what age you're at, that lack of education is still something that sticks out to me like a sore thumb because people just don't know. But on the other hand, when people do know, you're like, how did you figure that out, right?
Yeah.
And so where would you say your clients stand in terms of knowing versus not knowing in terms of all of financial literacy?
I think the majority don't know. I was just in California meeting with a client and he's starving to understand money and he's in his just turned 40 years old and played in the NFL and had a great career and whatnot, and has launched his own business and been doing that for 6 or 7 years at this point in time. But he just didn't know so much about money, but he wants to know. And I think everybody ultimately does want to know. It comes down to something you said. Do you have the time?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think you have to decide, are you going to go educate yourself so that you know and you can handle it? Or do you just need to outsource it, as in go find somebody who already has that knowledge, hire them so you can continue to focus on whatever it is that you're doing? We're talking about athletes for me, but even if you're an employee in a business and you're trying to get your promotion, well, maybe you just need to be focused on that. And in the meantime, you need to go get an advisor to tell you what to do about your budget, where to save your money, all of those things, because what you need to be focused on is getting that promotion so you can make $100K more a year.
Yeah, 100%.
So the opportunity cost has to be weighed of learning these things yourself. But I will say, there are so many resources to learn these things on your own today that there's almost no excuse not to know it if you have the time to go get it and decide not to hire someone.
So 2 things back to that. The first thing I'll point out about what you just said, I agree with you. I think the problem, and that's the solution that I'm trying to solve with this podcast, is who can you trust? I cannot tell you the amount of tax advice, TikToks or Reels on Instagram or Facebook, I don't even know what they're called on Facebook, Reels too maybe, are total BS and nonsense is insane. Like if I'm the IRS, right, and we fight the government for a living, but we also help them understand certain concepts. But if I'm the IRS and I see these knuckleheads, that's what they are. They're knuckleheads because they're trying to get you in on a false pretense.
Yeah.
Telling you that you can do the Augusta rule and you're going to save this amount of money. Okay, then you get audited. Then what happens when there's no basis for taking the Augusta rule, right? So you have all these things being posted. It's like, what is true and what is not?
Yes.
And I'm in a couple accounting influencer, like not actual influencers, it's just the name of the group, like accounting influencer groups. And I cannot tell you, I would say a common post in there every day is, here's another client coming to me with a TikTok video telling me they want to structure their business like this because
they want to pay their kids. They want to do this.
Exactly.
This guy said I could save $300,000 on my taxes by buying a boat. And it's like, come on. Like, okay, if you tell me what the real situation was that he based that off of, I can tell you there's 20 things that you're not doing that person was able to use that for.
I'm going to give you a great example. We had a client come to us. He's a real estate agent selling homes on the water in South Florida. He said, I want to buy a jet ski through my business.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Right? What's ordinary and necessary? I want to be able to take my clients and show them the view of the home from the water. Okay. And we're like, yeah, you probably can't do that. We're going to say no to that one. And out of total randomness, a couple months ago, this was a couple years ago, and I saw a reel that talked about this exact same scenario. Maybe the client left us and went to this guy because he said yes.
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, my client could buy a jet ski to show his clients the homes from the water. But if you get audited, everything's a write-off until it's not. And I think that's something people don't understand, right? You can write things off all you want until the IRS comes knocking. But going back, if I'm the IRS looking at these knuckleheads, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to put you under a microscope because if you're giving this advice, what are you doing, or what are the clients in your office, doing that you're saying is okay and allowed? And that's where I go back to having someone like you in their corner, right? Structured as a family office, able to be a sounding board, because they need, number one, to verify the information is true. Like, I could promise you that there are insurance agents out there telling you that, oh yeah, this would be covered under a claim just to get the sale done.
Yeah.
And it's not covered under a claim, right? And they don't know that. They don't know that. So that's why I want to make this podcast a resource where if someone does want to take the time to understand it, and I think they should for the basic concepts of just understanding how it works. They don't need to know the ins and outs and right how the claim process works, but at least understand the foundation of it. So that way they can say, okay, this guy is totally screwing me. This girl is not honest with me about what she's talking about. So it creates this now momentum of like what's real, what's not. And I want the best of the best to be a resource where we've done our due diligence on Dustin. We've done work with Dustin. We've sat on a panel with Dustin for NIL. And we know that he is a trusted person in this industry that you can go to and be that resource. How often do you see NFL players going to resources that are just total nonsense?
A lot. And so, I mean, you definitely explained that part really well. Like a lot of times you're just getting bad advice from a bad person in the sense of that they're giving you advice that best benefits them, not that best benefits you. So you hit on that part well. What I'm going to hit on is something slightly different, which is why family office, what I do, is why I think that's what, at least in the athlete space, you need to be using, is that all of these people that they're going to aren't actually giving bad advice, and they're not bad people, but they're giving advice in their vacuum, as in their lane only.
It's true.
And so the player's job is you go to your CPA and you say, hey, CPA, what should I do? And they say, do this. And then you go to your attorney who's drawn up your legal entity documents or your estate plan, and you say, hey, attorney, I want to do this. What should I do? And they give you both great pieces of advice, but they've never communicated with each other. And it's your job to figure out, okay, I got these two great pieces of legal advice, tax advice, and you have to put it together and make it all happen. And oh, by the way, now you have to put it together and make it all happen. You have to then make sure it continues to happen so that you can continue whatever structure was put in place. And that is just one, if you're an active player in the NFL or any athlete, or if you become an entrepreneur afterwards and you're trying to run a business, that's a lot of time that's going to take for you to do that. And I guarantee you're going to screw it up. And I'll say that long tail of making sure this continues to happen, it's one thing to put everything in place. It's another thing, as I would call it, to administer that structure.
100%.
And so why family office and what I do and being involved and being the person who talks to the CPA, talks to the attorney, talks to the insurance agent, does all of that for you with the knowledge that I have. I know the questions to ask, and I know how to put it all together and then go between them and communicate with them and get it all put together. Then I actually continue to administer that for you so that you don't have to figure out how to make this work for the next 10 years, which is the goal of why we're even doing this in the first place. So I just want to make that point that it's not all bad advice. It's actually probably exactly the advice or great advice. It's just not coordinated and then administered the right way. So it fails. And then you spend a bunch of legal and tax dollars to get it done, and you just wasted it.
And I think you brought up a very important point that I want to pull out is, and I think when you have the money to do it, it's more comfortable for you to make that decision. But when you don't, you don't want to do it. But if you're going to start something, whether you're an NFL player, whether you're a young entrepreneur, take the time, and especially, I can't emphasize this enough, the investment of hiring an attorney, hiring a tax expert, and hiring someone to oversee the financial aspect of things, whether it's a fractional CFO, which for those of you that don't know what that means you're literally hiring a part-time chief financial officer to come into your business and look at things and tell you about things that you're not the expert on. But to have those three people in a room, on a call, on a Zoom together, can save you so much, not just time or money, but stress. In the long run of things is so important. And that is where, in our tax resolution side of the business, we see so many people, right? They trusted one person, or they just didn't do it right themselves from the start. So it's like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just getting this off the ground. Well, like you said, in today's world, I could pick up my phone and within a couple hours know kind of the direction at least I need to go in or who I need to contact. But when you have the coordination between the legal expert, the tax expert, and the financial expert, now that is a trifecta for success. Because you go to the people that know what they're doing and what they're the expert in. That's why, for example, you're sitting here on this podcast. Do I know enough to give some advice to someone about investing and savings? Absolutely. Would I ever do it? Absolutely not, right? Because I'm not the expert. I haven't been doing this for years and years and years. And while my advice might be on par with what you're saying, you might connect the dots or see the administration of whatever the program is you guys have put together through and through, whereas I might just say one thing and then they take that and run with it, right? So it's so important to me to bring on the vet, the industry expert to ask the questions for them to gain the understanding and hopefully walk away from this conversation saying, holy shit, maybe instead of going out to dinner a couple nights a week, I should take that money from my business and hire a lawyer, get my articles of incorporation in place, get my operating agreement in place, make sure all the shareholders knows what's what. And the what if situations, I think, is where people don't plan enough, and probably where you come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to have someone you can lean on that knows enough in every category to protect you and really to help you focus on what you're good at. Because in even as an employee in a company, I'm a big believer in entrepreneur, right? You have an opportunity as you work inside of a company to still be an entrepreneur in the sense of you take pride in being a part of that business and you're trying to grow it. And so that still takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. Some people who are just earning a W-2 wage are working 60, 70 hours a week. So like your personal finances are going to take a back seat to that because you're trying to do something.
Right.
It's not your business. You're not a football player. You're not an athlete, but it's still a very valuable person in a business.
Yeah.
But you still need to have somebody to help you stay on track with what you're trying to do in your personal life when you're so focused on what you're trying to do in your career, especially as a young person getting out of the gate.
Yeah, and Ben just pulled something up. What is the where is this from? Just so we give the source of it.
It is The Informed Investor.
Okay, so studies indicate that 60% of small business owners do not work with a financial advisor or other outside wealth management professionals. Some may be trying to manage their own finances, while many are simply too busy with day-to-day operations of their business. And there you go, right? And that's when it, to me, comes down to the delegation of things. And what you talked about, right, is you can kind of do it, a little bit and go to the right person. But by having someone do it, that's their full-time job, that is what their career is in, makes the world of a difference. And I think one of the most important things, this is probably for more so NFL or entrepreneurs, NFL players or entrepreneurs. If you're going to have that go-to person, listen to Dustin. Listen to what he said. He is the one talking to the other experts. He's not going out and, it would be super easy for Dustin to get his insurance license and get carriers on board. But you're not doing that because that's not your goal. What you're doing is connecting with the industry expert to do that. And that is also where I think people fall face down. We see this a lot in doctors' offices, right?
Yeah.
The doctor office has the office manager, is what they always like to call it, right? And that office manager is supposed to be in charge of keeping, I'll use a medical analogy here, right? Keeping the heartbeat alive and well of that office. But so many times we see the financial advisor drops the ball because they're trying to do something that they're not skilled in, that they're not an expert in.
Yep.
We use this analogy a lot in our office. Right? You have kids. I'm sure at some point your kids are going to get braces. But what's going to happen? Your dentist is going to tell you, hey, you need to take him to an orthodontist that does specialty in braces. And I'm not the orthodontist, right? So he's referring it out to an expert. Well, could he put braces on your teeth? Probably. But is he going to do that, or is she going to do that? No. They're going to send you to someone that is what they do. And I think that's what's so important. You kind of have people in these organizations that I think try and do it all, but you really need to connect with the person that does that full time.
Yeah, and I would even say, like, the dental analogy is good, but also when you show up to that orthodontist, you don't know the questions to ask even that orthodontist. So wouldn't it be nice if the dentist came along with you and was able to be in the room as you're having this discussion with the orthodontist and be able to say, here's why you should do that. Here's what you need to consider. That's the value of the family office approach. See, traditional financial advising, wealth management is very often, I do investments, and then, yes, I know a little bit about tax, I know a little bit about estate, I know a little bit about business entity structuring. I'm going to refer you to the CPA, I'm going to refer you to this attorney, but you go talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay. And figure it out, and then come back to me and tell me what they said.
Yeah.
That's helpful and to an extent. But where family office is different is, hey, me, the advisor, going to go talk to these individuals about the situation that I've uncovered. I'm going to have enough conversations to then come back to you, explain to you all I've talked to you about them and what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah.
You're going to get to final sign off, ask any additional questions that will go get answered for you, but then I will go work with them to get it all done for you. So that's where that family office approach just changes the whole dynamic of it, where it's less you client, and it's more me as the advisor taking on the workload of that. But to your point, I'm not going to do something that I don't know. I'm going to go get somebody, but I know enough to ask the right questions of that person that you, just as the client, may not know. I want to hit on something really quick on this 60% thing, though. This is a soapbox moment for a second, but part of that problem is how most financial advisors charge clients, which we talked about in the short form. So go look at that. An entrepreneur who starts a business usually takes the majority of their wealth and puts it into that business. So when a financial advisor charges 1% on the assets they manage to advise them, not just on the investments, but on other things, when that's the method of charging, well, there's no assets to invest, so they can't get paid. So then thereby they are not incentivized to work with entrepreneurs or small business owners. So this gets back to, you have to go find, and there's more of us that are coming out that charge in a different way, where we can charge on a retainer basis, as an example, like I do. So when a business owner wants to come work with me, I can charge them a retainer to their business, by the way, which is deductible expense to their business because I'm a business advisor to them.
Absolutely.
And so then I can charge them that fee, and I can help them on everything. Well, because look, we all have to get paid. We're not doing all of this stuff for free.
Right.
But I can get paid, and they can get what they need out of that and hire a financial advisor. So I put part of that percentage on the fact of the way that most of the industry works from a fee perspective is inadequate for those people.
I agree. And I think, listen, I think it's almost to the point where there's so much information out there. It's how do you dig through what's real and what's not, or who to trust or who to go to. And again, that's why I want us to be this resource where it's like someone hears Dustin talk, they see his face, they know he's reputable because he's come on the best of the best, and they go to him for his services without a worry, listen, always do your own research, of course, but without a worry. So I got a fun question for you. What is like the craziest call you've ever gotten? Someone wants to do something and you had to say no.
Oh, the craziest call that I had to say no to. Not that long ago, I had a client, and these are just like athletes, clients who sell their businesses, for $50 million as an example. This is an example of, they're just like an athlete who just finished playing, right, and made $50 million over a course of 10 years. Well, this person just made $50 million overnight, in essence. And usually those first 2 years, my entire job is to get them not to spend far too much of it.
Right.
It's planes, it's boats, it's ranches, it's everything. This is something I said no to, and I always say this is still the client's money, so they can still decide to do it. And they did decide to do this, but I said no to it. They had a passion for working out, fitness, and they wanted to combine an MMA gym with a traditional weightlifting gym, and found a building that was nice but overpriced, purchased that building, started the gym, they came to us asking about this. And I said, look, if this is a passion that you absolutely want to do, go ahead and do it. I'm going to tell you right now that you're going to make no money on the actual gym. So I hope that this building is going to be worth more than what you pay for in like 3 to 5 years, because most likely, unless you're going to, because he wasn't going to work in it 100% of the time. Unless you're going to work in it 100% of the time, this is not going to be a success.
Right.
Has nothing against you, has nothing against what you're trying to do. This is just an industry that is so difficult to do what you want to do, and you're combining two different industries together.
What city was it in?
Is locally.
Okay.
And so I just felt like, look, you're gonna look at this as it's a passion, and you're probably gonna lose all your money, but you want to give it a go. And if it ends up success, you can come tell me and throw it in my face, and that's totally fine. But I just really don't think you should do it. I think there's better ways to use a few $1 million. So anyways, it's his money. He ended up deciding to do it, went out and bought the building like in the next week after that. And fast forward 2 years and the business doesn't exist anymore. still owns the building, is leasing it. So he's trying to get another tenant to run a gym there. But so that's an example of he had 50 million and he probably put 3 to 4 million in it just like that. That's a significant amount of invested capital that essentially went down the drain.
Yeah.
So it's not super crazy because I guess luckily on the front end when I talk to clients, I just like to keep it very real with them that I'm not going to just allow you to do anything you want, but it is still your money. So you can still decide to do it, but I'm going to shoot you very straight.
Right.
And not try to feel like, oh, I have to save this relationship to appease you in every request you have, because that's not what you're paying me to do.
Right. That's my question to you really is it ever hard to say no? You know what I mean? Is it ever? Because I can only imagine they're paying you and it's like, it's my money, I want to do what I want, but you're there saying no, which can be an annoyance.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard, and I try to do it as tactfully as I can, because this is someone's dream, right? Like, and most of the time, when somebody like that wants to buy a plane or a boat or something, it's something they've thought about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think these purchases are on like total whims.
Yeah,
they're not. They've thought about this and they finally have the money and they just want to go do it because they want to achieve that dream. So you have to understand that when you have this conversation with them. So yeah, it's hard. And it is hard because you're like, this is a brand new client. If I piss this guy off, X amount of dollars he's paying us on an annual basis could go out the window if he's not happy with it.
Yeah.
But I always believe that doing the right thing, they've hired me to tell them what I believe with my knowledge. In the end, they'll appreciate it, whether it ends up a success
100%,
or not.
100%. And I think that's the thing, that in those kind of situations, when you're saying no because it's in their best interests. And that can be hard to see, though. I'll tell you, that could be hard to see from your perspective. You're like, no. Listen, I'm telling you, this is it. That I've been there. But then when someone is saying no, it's like, okay, they probably know something that you don't, and you're not being objective whatsoever, because in this case, it's a passion.
Yeah.
What about on the opposite end? What is something that was super expensive that you said yes to because the money was there to do it?
Well, we talked about this off air, but I mean, had a client buy a pretty expensive yacht that, again, it was something that the clients had, husband and wife had talked about for a very long time, and something they just really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now, they wanted to buy this expensive yacht just to use, but they had done some research on this, but we really convinced them that, hey, you should put it in a charter pool, make some revenue off of it, because this is a lot of money. Yes, you can do it and you can just use it personally and it's fine, but why not, if you're not using it, make some sort of revenue off it? So we tried to find that balancing act with it for them. But yeah, that was early in my career of advising kind of this ultra high net worth space. And so it was quite the experience.
Yeah. Do you happen to know off top of your head, like what the numbers are to run a boat like that annually?
Yeah, it was about $2 million a year.
To run the boat.
Yeah. So
crew, cleaning, fuel.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. And I think they were going to net expense after some charter revenue they still would have cost them about $1 million a year.
Yeah. No one can ever cover with charter.
Yeah. So,
people think they can. Same with planes.
You have to look at like, oh, it's going to cost me this, but then what is the ongoing cost and can that fit in it? And that's why I feel like, in my space, in the athlete space, private flights and chartering private jets and stuff is where you get into a place where I understand why you want to do it, not just from like the look and the coolness factor, but because you are a public figure and you don't want to deal with what it might be to be in a public airport. But at the same time, it's so expensive. And,
it is so expensive.
And it's not within your means.
Yeah.
Like, private flying is really for people who are worth like 100 million or more for the most part. And so that's a hard pill for, I think, a lot of guys to swallow. But I get the anonymity and the aspect of the privacy, but doing it everywhere all the time, you probably don't need to do.
Yeah. And I think part of that comes down to convenience at certain times, right?
Yep.
The convenience and the time that's saved between not connecting or here or there. But yeah, I mean, listen, to have the disposable income to spend $2 million on a yacht obviously means that, you've done something right. And if you're saying yes, that's even more so like, okay, these people can do it. But I think it's so important, and the lesson to take away from this is have people that you trust and that you've done your homework on your team. Because the people that tell you no are probably the best people in your life. They really are.
Yeah.
The people that just tell you yes, go and do, they're probably not the best. It's the people that tell you no. They're telling you no because they care.
Yeah.
Not because they don't want to see you achieve your goal or achieve your dream. It's because they care about you. And they're able to look at something with no emotions attached to it. And I think that's another thing that I struggle with. Just in terms of I'm a big giver, right? And actually, in the Jewish religion, there's some language that talks about giving back when you have nothing. And it's very interesting. But sometimes, when you say no to people, it's like, gosh, I'll give you an example. And this one I didn't say necessarily no because I cared about them. I just thought it was outrageous. And maybe he's going to listen to this, maybe he's not. I used to have a personal trainer that was in Florida, and I trained with him for a while. Then out of nowhere, he's like, text me, called me, and I'd helped him with a couple things. It's like, hey, can you loan me some money?
Here we go.
Okay. And this is not a friend, right? This is not a friend. Can you loan me some money? I'm like, I'm 25 years old, so I'm not accustomed to that, right? I'm a giver in terms of when people don't ask, right? I'm a giver in terms of paying for the 5 people behind me at Starbucks, things of that nature. But when someone asks you for a loan like that, it's so distasteful in my opinion, because it's like, we're not friends. We're not family. You just see me as a dollar sign.
Yeah.
And you think that like I'm just going to here to give you money. I actually don't think I even answered his text ever. I think I just literally ghosted. I probably still have sessions that I are not used,
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's like, how often do you see that happen in your world where it's like, oh, my family member needs some money? Is that a common thing that you see?
Yeah, it's the most common thing that you see is, players are taken advantage of by third parties that they don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're most often taken advantage of by the people closest to them.
Yeah.
And it's because somebody preys on their heart and their care and their love for them. So it's super unfortunate, but yeah, it happens all the time. It's why it's, and there's more people talking about it. Alex Hormozy talks about it a lot. Like, you really have to look at like your core group of family and friends. And it sounds really harsh, but sometimes as you achieve levels of success we're talking about, some of those people aren't the best people to have in your life anymore. And it's nothing. It's not, you try to say it in not a bad sense, but it does sound bad, but it's just, they're bad because they want something from you, or the way that they treat you because there's a jealousy or whatever it ends up being just pulls you back down from where you're trying to go or where you have achieved. And so for a lot of athletes, it's the most difficult thing to not take care of the family, because a lot of the reason they get to where they are is because the family sacrificed to get them there.
Yeah.
And I get that. And so there's plenty of things to do to pay that back, but there's things that are beyond that does happen far too often.
Yeah. And I get now why it's hard, because it's like, you like a person, but then are they there for the right reason? Are they there for the wrong reason? Right. And I think you see that a lot, especially, I'll say this. One of the coolest examples I've seen recently is Simone Biles, I think she's the Olympian, right?
Yeah.
And her biological mother came out recently and said, I want to have a relationship with you and I want to be together, not be together like we're, daughter, mother type relationship. But then at the end, she says, when you're ready to come to me and have this relationship, I'm going to be here. And she's not talking about anything more. She's like, I'm proud of you. And I think so many times we see the opposite, right? You see like someone makes it and then everyone comes out of the woodwork. It's like, it's not when you're ready. It's, I'm now ready to be around you. Do you see that a lot too?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, that is the example. It's like, now they've made it. Now the vultures come around, right? And looking for their cut of the meat, I guess is the best way to say it.
And that was one of the cooler things I've seen from her biological mother, because she's like, listen, I was drug addict. I think she was an alcoholic as well. And she said, when you're ready
Yeah.
You come to me. And listen, she's achieved a ton of success, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure she's uber successful with what she does. She set records, and everyone knows she's a household name by now.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to kind of see how that plays out and see how that world plays out when someone makes it, and then all these people come out of the woodwork. Because going back to how we got here originally, of seeing those people around my family that were there for the wrong reasons, it drives me nuts. You
Yeah. Well,
know?
I think you have the way I take that, and I guess one of my philosophies in life is like every relationship has to be mutual.
Yeah.
And in all of the levels that you're looking to get things out of, the other person has to be looking to get the same things out of.
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, then either you need to have a discussion to figure out why that is, or you need to find a different relationship. And that's where I, just like bringing it back to some of what we talked about, and how an advisor charges and what is delivered by that fee. If your advisor is just charging you an asset under management fee and investing your money for that fee, one, a lot of the investments he's going to pick, you can literally just buy yourself on Robinhood or, any of the other places. And he's hiring managers to do the underlying selection of the investments. So what value is that really bringing today? I'm not sure. But, then also there's no production from that advisor of here's the value I provided you for that other than the associated return of your investments.
Right.
It's just a bad metric to measure somebody by.
Right.
Versus the way I do is I put a fee in front of the client and says, hey, this is what I'm going to charge you for the next year.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I expect to do for you over the next year and the value that will create. Some of it's dollar value, some of it's efficiency in your life, getting you time back, getting you out of having a conversation. But I'm going to tell you what that is. Then every year we're going to sit down and we're going to revisit that. What did I do that I said I was going to do? What is maybe left that we didn't get done? What do I next think I'm going to do for you? And what is the fee associated with that? So we are in total alignment every single year of how much you're paying me and what you're getting for that.
Right.
And that's that's using the fee and how we're engaged to build the mutual aspect of what's going on here that I just love. And when I launched my firm, how I wanted to interact with clients.
Let's talk about something that could change the way you handle your money. Imagine a world where your bank account is as fortified as an armored truck. Welcome to the Brinks Armored Account, the last debit card you'll ever need. With at least one monthly deposit of $500 or more, you can say goodbye to monthly fees and hello to money management that pays you back. With the Brinks Armored Account, you get cash back on your purchases, access to over 100,000 ATMs with one free withdrawal per month, and an optional overdraft service that respects your boundaries. But that's not all. Brinks takes security as seriously as you do. Enjoy peace of mind with ID theft protection and purchase assurance, guarding your transactions and new purchases against damage or theft. It's not just an account, it's an armor for your finances. Qualify for early direct deposit, and you can receive your paycheck or government benefits up to 2 days faster. It's your money. Why would you wait? Step into the future of financial confidence with the Brinks Armored Account. Visit brinksarmored.com to learn more or connect with Brinks Armored on social media. Brinks Armored Account. It's not just safe, it's Brinks safe. How do you go about getting clients? Is it word of mouth in the NFL, or what is the program like to become an NFL financial advisor?
Yeah, I mean, well, getting formally certified by the NFLPA is one thing. We'll set that like aside, but because there's probably a whole episode to talk about on that. But in general,
is it challenging though?
Well, there's just some requirements you have to meet, and then you have to apply and pay a fee, and there's some questions of value. But as far as how you get clients, I mean, like any industry, I feel like it's about building relationships. But because of the things we've talked about, athletes are inherently built to distrust people.
Hey, that's what I was going to think.
So it's a long-term, relationship building process. Most of my clients, I would say, it takes 12 to 18 months for them to really consider, okay, yeah, I want to hire you. Of you being around them, knowing them, or unless they come directly from a referral source who has worked with me for a while, then it's quicker. But if I've never known you, you don't know anybody that I work with,
right?
It's a long time. So I go to events, I go to combines, Senior Bowls, other NFL events, build relationships with agents, trainers. I like to trainers are my favorite because of all the people around a football player or an athlete in general. I think the closest that I've found to the way I want to work with a player and the mutual engagement and relationship I want to have is a trainer who spends so much time with these guys, sees them in the off season, during the season, has worked with them maybe since 8th grade in some instances. So those are the ones that I've built some of the best relationships with and am the closest with because of the way that they interact with the players is similar to how I do.
Yeah, so networking and nurturing those relationships is a huge part of what you do.
Which is everything in life. Like, to the rest of the listeners who aren't an athlete, like if you're trying to do anything in life, education is up there and important. And I'm not just talking formal education like going to college, like go out and get real world knowledge about what you're trying to do. But you also have to get to know people because it is about who you know if you want to go someplace in life. And
absolutely. That's how we're sitting here right now.
Right. So go build relationships. Go write a letter. I've written so many handwritten letters to players and to others that I've made relationships with over time. Write a handwritten letter to someone. It doesn't happen anymore. If you get it to them, they're going to open it and it's going to stick out in their mind.
Yeah.
And go as high as you want. If there's somebody you've watched on YouTube for a while and you're like, that's a person I want to learn something from, write them a letter and mail it to them.
Do you believe in manifestation?
I will say that 2 years ago, I didn't.
Okay.
My wife has been into it for a while and really gone on a journey. And then I became an entrepreneur and I found both faith and manifestation in the last couple of years. And a lot of it was because as an entrepreneur, you're out there on your own.
Yeah.
And being on your own makes you think about a whole lot of things that you've never thought about before. And at first it's exhilarating to have all the control and be in charge and make all the decisions. But then you realize how heavy that weight is.
Yeah.
And so through both faith and manifestation and just the positive mindset, I've realized that you can offload some of that weight, both through the belief of God and that he's got a path for you, and also building a picture in your mind of what this is actually going to look like and thinking about it, talking about it every day to yourself and to other people. That takes a lot of weight off of your shoulders, off of your mind, of where you're trying to go. So yeah, I 100% believe in it today.
Yeah, I similar to you, I would say I found it a couple of years ago from my girlfriend. Actually, I journal. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, drink water, journal. Well, I sleep with mouth tape on because I got a deviated septum. So I'll say I take off my mouth tape, I drink water, and then I go and journal. And I write the same things down every single day. And I've done that for over a year now, maybe almost 2 years now. Yeah. And I can tell you that the power of manifestation is so real. That is, I mean, look at the sponsors that we have on the table, right? Pathwater, fastest growing beverage company in America. I think 2 years consecutively back to back. Brinks, household name, 165-year-old company founded in Illinois. You have 76,000 global employees, and they believed in me, right? Yeah. But this is 4 years. I'm over 4 years into this ordeal and podcast, and it's just now getting to the point where I'm building, you know? And I think this parallels perfectly with something I've been wanting to talk about with you, and I alluded to it when we talked about financial nihilism. That's what it's called, right? Is consistency and patience. And I'll give you my spiel on this, and then I'll let you give yours, because I think that this is such a topic, or such an important topic, that's on point with financial advising, with setting yourself up to have some sort of your version of financial freedom. My generation, right? And again, let's go back to 30 and under. I think lacks the ability to be patient. And because they're not able to be patient, they're unable to stay consistent with whatever they want to achieve. And I think the reason for that is number one, anything you want in the world, whether it's knowledge, whether it's video, whether it's audio, whether it's craziness, is accessible in about 10 seconds from me picking up this device, right? You could say, Maverick, how could you build a rocket ship? I could find you how to build a rocket ship, right? And we could see a step-by-step tutorial of how to build a rocket ship. We could.
Yeah.
And let's take Amazon Prime. You want something? most likely 80, 70, 80% of what you want is going to be not available next day. Now they're doing over the night time, right? They're going to drop it off in the middle of the night. They're going to drop it off. I had to order a keyboard for one of our office managers in Florida, and he's texted me at, I think, 5 or 6 o'clock. I ordered it probably around 7:30 at night, and it was there at 7 a.m. the next morning before he even stepped into the office. And I think because of those things, the access to technology and knowledge, Amazon Prime, as crazy as it is to compartmentalize one vertical in one sector, it's one that almost everyone uses. And the ability to stay patient to achieve what you want is out the window. And I think we look at that in terms of gambling. We talked about that going back to financial nihilism. Gambling takes the patience away. After the game's done, you know the outcome, whether you won or you lost. And so having the ability to stay patient then, like I said, goes into the consistency aspect. And I think consistency is single-handedly the most important thing in life. And there was a podcast that I used to listen to. I'm trying to blank on what it was. I want to say it was this guy, Ben Baller's podcast, but talked about water and rocks, right? Look at water and rocks. How long does it take for water consistently crashing into that rock to break down that rock? Hundreds and hundreds of years, but it does it because it's consistent.
Yep.
And that is the reason that this podcast is what it is today, because yes, did I take a 9-month break to revamp and restructure and rebuild? Absolutely. So we weren't consistently putting out episodes, but before that, there was a consistent schedule for episodes coming out, a consistent schedule that the audience knew was going to be there. And I think consistency and patience, if people can come together and understand how important those two things are, I mean, you could put that in any avenue, right?
Yeah.
And be successful in anything for the most part, as long as you stay consistent. It's so important. And the lack of, I don't know if I want to say drive or desire, to do those two things is scary to me. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think I put those two words together as just persistence, right? I think that is what persistence is those two words together. But I think by nature of the easy access to information, it's very hard to remain patient and consistent, because you're bombarded with new information every day that starts to get your mind thinking different directions. And that's why both faith and manifestation have helped me really, and reading a lot of books as well, have helped me really realize that oftentimes we need to just like not think. Don't let our brain make the decision. It's like, let what's inside here make the decision is usually the right course to go. And usually the course that says, just stay on path.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're doing and you will succeed.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to Think and Grow Rich, written in the 1930s. And that is one of the biggest concepts in there, is that you just have to remain consistent, doing the same thing over and over with a clear desire and vision of what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
As long as you stick to that, you will get there.
Yeah.
There's no idea or determination of exact time, but you will get there. So we have to figure out a way to bring that back to society. And the only way I can think of is to bombard these places with something like this, where we talk about it. And thankfully, there are a lot of others out there. Alex Hormozy is a big purveyor of, hey, if you're going to do anything, do it 100 times.
Yeah.
And do it 100 times every month for 12 months.
Yep.
And then look up and say, you know what, I probably need to do this for another 12 months.
Yeah.
And then probably after that, you can say, well, did that work or not? I need to change something. But for the most part, if you did that over and over again that many times, you're probably going to look up after 2 years and be like, this is working. I'm just going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so there's more and more information out there talking about it, but we just need to get it out there as often as we can.
And I think the short attention span plays a role into that. And that is why I love these long format podcasts, because the discussions we're able to have, I mean, Joe Rogan talks so much about this, and I think it is one of the reasons he's uber successful in what he does. I mean, he does a lot of things, but in podcasting specifically is because this is the healthy dialogue. This is me and my generation talking to you and your generation specifically, right? The conversation is anchored around financial advising and we're bringing it back to that topic for the most part. But the ability to have this conversation is something that is so important, where someone might on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn see a reel of us talking.
Yeah.
And listen, for the most part, are the teams going to clip something that's positive and beneficial, or is going to get them interested, right? The cliche clickbait. Yeah, we might use clickbait, but we're going to use it in a way because this, again, we talked about this before, the positive impact that this can leave on the world is something that is very important to me and in my heart. But the ability for some people to watch even a tax video, going back to, right, the Augusta rule video, you're watching a 15 to 35-second clip and you're going to come to me and be like, hey, I watched this 15-second clip. I want to do that. It's like, did you even look any further? Right?
Yeah.
And again, I do this as well. So I'm not saying that I don't do it sometimes, but you also read something sometimes now and you just believe it.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, not what am I going to take the time now to go through and make sure that that's not true?
You have to in every space. I mean, we won't get into the health situations that have happened over the last few years because we don't, but if you don't do your own research on everything in life today, you're doing yourself and everybody around you an immense disservice.
I agree.
And I do try to find people now. I test new people I meet and friends and stuff by sending them podcasts that are longer form.
Yeah, I
because
love that.
I want to see, are you willing to sit down and watch or listen to this like an hour and a half or 2.5 hour episode that I think is extremely valuable and is valuable to you? That's why I'm sending it to you, because I want to be around people who are willing to take that time to educate themselves on what's going on. Like, I love the All In podcast. I listen to it every single week, and it's usually an hour to an hour and a half long, and they've interviewed presidential candidates, and it's probably the best place to get a feel for these candidates that we're all
100%
putting in the most powerful position in the world.
100%.
Go find a place like that where you can get to hear them talking in unedited, long form, no idea what the questions are going to be situation before you make a decision about who to vote for off of clickbait that's reels on Instagram.
100%. This is so crazy to even say that, but this is the reality we live in. I think the outcome of the election could be decided if Joe Rogan hosted both of the candidates and had a 3 to 5 hour long conversation. Just like Elon was like, I'm going to have a conversation with Trump. I would love to see a conversation. A debate is, to me, it's like watching social media again, because they're going to turn the microphone off after 45 seconds, a minute. And then there is no time in history that something is productively done in a short amount of time when it comes to having a conversation, understanding viewpoints. You can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time you can do it is when someone is, not right in the head, and then you pick up on that. You're like, okay, this isn't worth the time. But that whole aspect of taking the time to understand, again, plays into what we're talking about, right? Financial advising. The clients need to be willing to sit with you, to have you explain, hey, this is what I want to do. Hey, this is how I'm going to do it. Do you ever get pushback on that where it's like, hey, I just trust you. You just go ahead and do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell clients on the front end or prospects as I'm meeting with them is like, hey, I'm not the guy you're just going to turn everything over to and never hear from and never talk to. Like, that's not the way this is going to work to maximize the outcome for either one of us and not the relationship I want. But what I do tell them is, look, hey, in my world, you are busy. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
So if we need to just set up 30 minutes once a week, and that's all the time you have, well, let's do that. Right. It's going to take us longer to get done what we need to get done, but let's just do that. That fits in your schedule. Let's get it done, and let's set it up that way. But we're going to have a conversation. Like, this is not going to happen without us having real conversations. Like, I just went to California, spent a day and a half with a client out there. Like, that was because they just had their 4th baby. He was going to have intermittent time to come in and out depending on what was going on at the house. So I want to make sure I had plenty of time for him to go out, come back, we'll chunk it out 30 minutes or 2 hours. Ended up, we had a whole day, but I didn't know. So I was trying to be flexible to make sure we had that time. So you've got to build that in order to be able to have the necessary real conversations to get anything meaningful done.
And let's take it a step further for a second. And Ben, leave this up. Don't take it away because I want to go to that. Take it a step further. Patience and consistency is what you need when it comes to saving and investing.
Yes.
If you don't have the patience or the consistency, you have neither.
Yeah.
In terms of saving or investing.
No, if you want to, if you want to day trade from the aspect of you trade off of emotions all the time, you're never going to achieve success.
Yeah.
There's tons of statistics out there around, like, if you miss even 30 days in a year of not being invested in the market, you can dramatically impact the returns, because on average, like, most of the returns come from like 30 days in one single year. So if you just happen to miss 1 or 2 of them or all 30 of them, you basically don't get any of the return that any other person who just stayed invested the whole year, rode out the ups and downs, got. So yeah, it's a requirement. If you want to build long-term wealth, especially wealth that lasts multiple generations, you have to be patient, persistent, consistent, all of those things. It's the only way that you get there. Wealthy people don't do anything that normal people can't do.
Exactly.
They just hire really great advice, and they do the same thing over and over again.
And they get back up when they fall.
Exactly.
I would say that's the biggest part, right? Getting back up when you fall down. But real quick, looking at this from Wellbrook Recovery, the average attention span for adults is 8 seconds. I think that was a study done by Microsoft in 2015. In comparison, the average attention span for a goldfish is 9 seconds. That comes from the National Center for Biotechnology Information in 2015. And in a study of over 2,000 participants, 25% of them couldn't get through a 1-minute video without losing interest.
And that's years ago. Imagine what it is today.
In children, too. That's the scary
pre-TikTok.
part. Pre-TikTok.
And we used to learn about the goldfish when we were kids, having only a 9-second attention span.
That is actually insane. The average mobile, that's even, and think about that, like you said, this is 2013, 2006. The average mobile user checks their phones 150 times a day. Ben, you got to see if you can find what it is now.
I'm about to look.
Yeah, look to see if you can find
Alex
what that is.
Hormozi hits on this too. Like, he talks about how he broke down his day, and I've sort of adopted it. He breaks it down into maker and meeting time, he calls them. So maker time is like when you're trying to make something. So you need, like, baking a cake. Like, you need to sit there and do step by step to make this cake, right? It's the same thing in business. You need to sit down and heads down, no interruptions, no meetings. Because we all know if you get a 30-minute meeting, that's probably 45 minutes to an hour out of your time. If you get an hour meeting, it's an hour and 15 to an hour and a half out of your time, because there's pre-meeting, post-meeting, run overtime, all this stuff. And so if you're got a 4-hour block in the morning and you stick a meeting in there, you've just chopped an hour and a half off of a 4-hour block, and then you got to get into your work. You might get one project done. So chunk out your time into, hey, for these 4 hours, nobody's going to interrupt me. I'm taking no meetings, nothing. And then for these other 4 hours, I'll take all the meetings I can get. I will literally fill every 30 minutes and do shorter meetings and fill every 30-minute time slot and knock them all out, because I'm in meeting mode. Yeah. Right? I can just jump from call to call to call to call to call.
Yeah, that's funny. It's funny because I use that same method actually in my life, where I will block out time in my calendar of get shit done. Yeah. It's as simple as that, because you got to do the work. But a lot of my days too are spent meeting with people, and sometimes it drives me crazy because I just need to turn everything off and get the work done. Yeah. You know?
Because changing your brain from, hey, we're having this conversation now, to me then going back and jumping into somebody's financial plan is like a completely different thought process. It takes time for your brain to recalibrate, especially if you have a meaningful conversation with somebody. Like, there's a lot that you want to digest and think about from that. And so you just have to really contemplate that in anything in life. And that, to what we were talking about, builds consistency, right? That you use less brain power because you know all my meetings are going to be scheduled during this time, and I know I don't have to worry about doing that project that's heavy because I've got this time set aside for it.
No, 100%. And listen, I will be the first to say that I am not perfect. And I think that's one thing that people like, how do they just always do it right? Like yesterday, we went to the gym actually in the afternoon, which I have not been doing, usually been going in the morning, but the way the day started was I couldn't sleep and I was doing work. So I was like, it was 1 a.m. or 1:30. I was like, I'm not waking up at 5 or 6. I'm going to sleep in a little. I'll go to the gym in the afternoon. And I got back from the gym, and next thing you know, I told Ben, come in my room at 6:45. We'll go eat dinner. Next thing you know, it's like 7:40, and I'm just scrolling. I just scrolling, watching videos, just nonsense. I'm like, how did the time go by so fast? And you don't even realize it. And I think the other part of that is if you take the time when you recognize that and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have been doing that. That's when you know that you are on the right track. Yeah. The first step is always acknowledging the behavior and the mishaps of what's going on. But talking about time and patience and all this good stuff, tell me about this rule of 7 I always hear when it comes to saving, investing, where money doubles every
72.
72, okay.
Yeah, so you take any number, return number, percentage, and divide it by 72, and that will give you roughly when your money will double.
Okay.
So 7 into 72 is about 10 years.
Yeah.
Your money will double if you get a 7% on average return. So it's kind of quick and dirty math, back of the envelope. It's because not every year you're going to get exactly 7.
Right.
So, but it's a good adage when you're thinking about, okay, based on the returns I'm getting, when should I expect to have X amount of money? But that's all greatly impacted by, are you putting more money away?
Yeah.
Are you taking money out? So, I mean, I think to translate what we've been talking about in consistency, patience, and persistence is, we talked about just getting started, with money. Is you just have to get started putting something away.
Yeah.
And if you can pull up that video from Alex, we can. I love how he talks about, your thoughts on getting started on anything in life. But you have to just get started with putting something away and make it consistent. Set it on autopilot so that your brain power, as we talked about, can go and move to something different.
Yeah.
And that, hey, that's like taken care of. So I would just say, that's the translation to the investment side is focus on that above all else. Here,
this is it.
Yeah. No, I think he gave you the wrong link. Search for Alex Hormozi inversion thinking.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, inversion thinking is a phenomenal. Charlie Munger was one of the. I mean, it's not something new or something he invented, but Charlie Munger talks about it a lot. Yeah, that one right there. Our brains are trained to. You can pause and I'll talk about this for a second. Our brains are trained to think about negative thoughts way more than they are about positive thoughts. So one way you can kind of turn that on yourself is inversion thinking. So think about all of the negative versions of whatever you want to come up with. Like in this video, he talks about the 22 ways to stay broke. Because he's trying to show you, if you think about the ways to stay broke and you just flip them and say the opposite of that, that's how you can get rich. And so our brains are just more conditioned to think about the negatives, survival instinct in us. So if you can just write down the negatives, which are a lot easier for your brain, and then just next to it, turn it to a positive, that's what you should do every single day.
Interesting.
And so this is him talking about that in a little bit.
Version thinking, all right, which is something that Charlie Munger champions and a lot of other great thinkers. And so if we wanted to, and this would be the problem that we're solving for, if we wanted to make as little money as humanly possible, and we were employees and or business owners, what would we do? Well, number one, we would provide very little value. All right, that would be the first thing that we do is we'd have a skill set that just does not provide a significant amount of value to a business and or to a customer. All right, that's first off is what we would do. The second thing that we would do is we would not ask for very much of that value that we were creating. So hopefully we're creating some level of value, which is why we're getting employed or why we were asked to solve some problem for a customer, right? We're solving a problem. There's a job to be done. That is the value. That is the potential amount of money that we can earn. The amount of that potential money that we earn is predicated based on our ability to negotiate. And so we ask for a very small amount of that money. All right. So low value. And then of that small number, we ask even for a smaller percentage of that number because of our ability to negotiate. that would normally be the only two things that you'd think, okay, well, this is my potential and this is how much I asked
video,
for.
but
And so
we
those are
can
the only two
we can talk off
variables
of this.
that
But yeah,
would-
you know, you can use this thought process in so many areas of life, and so I think, you know, if you're sitting down and you're thinking to yourself, you know, anything we've talked about so far about like my personal life, how do I get my life on track? I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah.
Or in investing, I can't figure out how to save money, you know, so what do I need to do? Well, just write down probably what you've been doing if you
Yeah.
haven't been saving money, and all of the reasons why you haven't been saving money, and then just turn it on its head and write the opposite of it, and I guarantee you will end up saving money. And so it's just a great thought concept to use.
One of the pillars at the Maverick Teams, which is my consulting firm, but it's really the overall umbrella company of when someone asks, what do I do for a living? I could say, go check out the website because there's 5 different things that I'm a part of on a day-to-day basis. But one of the pillars is problem solving. And I think so many people focus on the problems and not the solution. And that goes hand in hand, obviously, with what he's talking about, you're bringing up right now, where I am always focused on solving the problem at hand. That is what I'm here to do, is solve the problem. This podcast, we're solving the problem of the financially illiterate people, right? The people that have no concept of understanding, and hopefully they will become financially literate after listening to some of the episodes of this podcast, the short form version of this podcast. And I really think so many people focus on the problems in their life, whereas you focus on the solution to those problems, and I think you'll see an exponential rise in everything around you because you're solving what those problems are, because there is a solution. So many times I think people say there's not a solution. I disagree with that. Maybe sometimes there's not, but most of the time you're in control of that solution, and you're the main driver of solving that problem because you know the problem that's at hand. And I think that's part of why I am who I am today, is because I am always able to go into somewhere and look at, okay, this is a problem, but what could be the solution for this, right? Like, how do we fix that problem before I'm even thinking in depth about, you know, oh my God, this is negative and this is this. It's like, okay, let's focus on the solution to that problem. And you have so many different avenues of that. Like, I will use financial literacy as the driver in this conversation for us, but I've been a part of financial literacy within high school curriculum. Biggest problem? Teaching the teacher.
Yeah.
How are you going to have an educator teach students on topics that they don't understand?
Yeah.
So the solution there is educate the teacher. However, I think educating the teacher also becomes a problem. Now it becomes time. Now it becomes money.
Yeah.
Now it becomes, now you have to send the teacher to school, sort of thing. As funny as that may sound, it's true. So that's why I've taken this different approach in education here, because the driver, while it can be inside the classroom, I think for these life skills topic with the emphasis on financial literacy is done outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
And it is done in an environment where, I mean, listen, I'm sometimes this person, I think we all sometimes are the people, it's like someone tells you not to do something, you want to do it. You know what I mean? Or when something's forced upon you, you don't want to do it, right? So in school, if a subject is forced upon someone,
which all of them are,
right? Are you going to have as much passion or absorb as much information because you're like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's a big part of it.
Well, I just want to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing on what you were saying is this is why we talked about in the short form a little bit, but this is why putting a financial plan together is so valuable for people. Is I want to sit down and understand what are your goals financially. And you may, and this client I was just meeting with in California is like, I don't even know if they're possible. And I was like, you know what? Probably as it sits today, they're not possible. Like, we're going to have to make some changes, but I want to put it formally together and show you that.
Yeah.
But the whole point of putting that plan together and even showing that it fails is to start to work backwards on, okay, we can make this work.
Yeah.
And there are things that you can do to impact it. And this is a point I want to make about investing specifically. You cannot control what happens in the companies you invest in. You can't control what Tim Cook does at Apple. You can't control what Jeff Bezos does at Amazon. You can't control these things. And so sitting there worrying about what they do day in and day out is a waste of your time. There's only two things you can control as an investor: how much you spend and how much you save. Those are the only things that you have control over, which byproduct is you've got to go earn money, right?
Right.
So you just need to focus on that, earning as much as you can, and saving what you should be saving and spending what you need to spend to live the life you want. But you have to have that savings. And if your plan says, hey, you don't have enough in retirement, or you don't have enough to buy that house in 2 years, then your only metric to change that is save more money.
Yeah, exactly.
And so focus on how do you do that.
Yeah.
Don't focus on this kind of relates back to the gambling. Don't focus on what's the quick fix to get a bigger return.
Yeah.
No, just get more money to save.
Yeah.
That's the answer, because that's what you actually can control.
And here's the ironic thing, and the sad thing as well. As simple as that answer is, it goes back to, I'll use your word, persistence.
Yeah.
Right? Having the ability to tell yourself, this is what I need to do to achieve this, instead of just saying, okay, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to meet it. And instead, flip the lens and be like, okay, if I stay consistent, if I stay persistent, right? If I stay patient, then maybe I'm going to set back my timeline a little bit, but I'm still going to achieve that same goal instead of just throwing it all away. And I'll give you this example because it is mindset. Someone very close to me sent me a Snapchat message reply about something, basically saying like they'll never get to experience this, or their family will never get to experience a particular thing I was doing at the time. My response back is, not with that attitude. If you say they're never going to do it,
right?
What is it? How is this? It's not just going to fall into your lap, right? It's not just going to happen. So you take the mindset and intertwine it with all these other aspects that we're talking about, and that's what creates what becomes your reality,
right?
And it gets so cliche, right? Like there's so many clips out there. It's like mindset, positive thinking, doing the right thing, and it's to the point where I actually created a system. I shouldn't say a system. I created something I call keys, right? Keys means keep earning your stay. And those keys, I have a bunch of them. I always continuously write them, but it's things like always be persistent, always be transparent, always be hardworking, always be a protector, always be loyal, right? Those to me are the keys to continue earning my seat at the table, to continue to grow, continue to be a better man, right?
Yeah.
And so I created that up because you hear about keys to success, keys to this. Keys open doors. But in order for you to keep that door open and continuing to open more doors, you can't just stop.
Right.
And that goes back to where I brought this up, right? That person that sent me that Snapchat, it's like, not with that. Change your mindset. Like you said, take the Alex Hormozy thing and say, flip it, right?
Yeah. I'm
going to get there. How am I going to get there? What am I going to do to get there? What are the steps and the action items I need to take to get there, right?
Yes.
So it's feel free, anyone, to use that. Keep earning your stay, because it's something that's important to me.
I think that's awesome. And when I look at and talk to NFL players, that's one of the things I try to get across. It's like, you did not get to the NFL without thinking something most people thought you could never do was 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
Almost every guy that makes it that far, and especially the guys that make it a long time in the league, were crazy enough to believe that they were always going to get there.
Yeah.
And what I try to get across them is everything you did and the way you thought about your NFL career is exactly what you need to be doing for your money.
Yeah.
It's no
that's true.
different.
That's true.
And in fact, compared to the rest of society who has never had that mindset before because they weren't trying to achieve something like being a professional athlete, which is so hard to do, you have that. You've built that muscle. It exists to a highest degree possible. You just need to translate it to your money and to whatever's next for you.
Yeah.
But you have all the skills. You need to learn some things. You need to hire the right advisor. But personally, you have all the skills, you have the right mindset. You just need to translate it into a different category.
This just made me think of something. I would say if we were to take a poll or do a study, let's say conduct a study, I would say that athletes have way more patience than the common person. 100%, because they've, someone that's making it for the most part started that journey when they were very young, had that dream when they were very young. Going back to our 3 words we've been using, persistence, consistency, and patience, right? Putting those 3 things together get you to the end. But even further, what is the end goal for every sports player? To win the championship. Yeah. That's not after 1 game. That's not after 2 games. It's not after 3 games. It's after a handful of games. It's after your career maybe moving to a different team. So it's interesting because that just popped in my head. I bet you that athletes have way more patience than other people.
Yeah, and if they don't maybe have as high of a level of patience, they got a high level of consistency, right?
Exactly.
It's just, in some combination, they have been built as a machine to just keep doing what they've been doing that's worked. And if it hasn't worked, they've also been engineered to tweak and change and adjust and learn. And so they have so much of the skills because of playing sports for that long. Like a lot of us might play sports. Like I played 3 sports all the way through high school. So I've got some of that experience, but I don't have it at that level where the pressure is so high.
Right.
And so not only do they have what I had from a different level, they have it from a level that the pressure is just like running a company. And so they have all of the skills necessary to do something great afterwards. And now they have some of the financial wherewithal to be able to do it as well. What's missing, in my opinion, is there's not enough really good advisors in all categories of what that means. There's not enough good ones. And because there's been this negative connotation, whether it's the broke statistic or it's hard to work with athletes, a lot of advisors have steered away from working with athletes because of it. But I love it because there's a huge space for me and it's an opening for me. But I also feel bad that there's not more of me to work with more athletes.
Yeah. And I think too, along that point is the intention of the advisor, right? What is the intention of that person? Are they there for the right reason? Are they there for the wrong reason? I'm curious to ask you a question. As time goes on, do you see more and more sports players coming from affluent backgrounds?
No.
Okay. No. And the reason I ask that question is because affluent people have the most access to resources to be successful, right? So we talk about, again, those 3 words. They have those resources to go and get that trainer every day, go and get access to the best nutrition and meal plans every day. But what I find very cool and fascinating as we've had this conversation, this has been in the background of my head, these people have access to none of that for the most part, right? Professional sports players, usually the story is they came from nothing. The rags to riches story, the typical cliche story of that. And so what's really cool to me is you have this group of people that have shown others that if you stay persistent, if you stay consistent, if you continue to do something over and over again and have that patience that it takes to succeed, you can achieve that success. And I think the other thing that I add on there, and the reason I ask that question is there is probably a lot of stress that comes from that individual because they know that me making or breaking it is going to change or keep my family's life the same, right? So that pressure is on. And it's like full blown on at what? 16, 17 years old, even earlier than that sometimes.
Yeah, I think the lack of all of the things that an affluent person gets builds the desire
100%
to have something else. Like you can't manufacture that desire
100%.
And I know that because one of the things that we're trying to do in my industry is for those that are that first generation wealth, how do you train the second generation who's going to have the wealth you didn't have to still obtain some level of that desire? You cannot 100% replicate it because their lives are going to be different. But you have to figure out a way to do it because that is the element that made you get to where you are. And somehow you have to produce that for the next generation in order to continue the legacy that you've built. And yeah, that's why majority of athlete stories are, I came from nothing to get here because they just had they had that desire,
Yeah.
because they didn't have those things.
Yeah, I want to stop for a second. I want to do a fun segment, Ben, and you could take a couple minutes because I have a couple things for him after. I want to see if you can go on like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, look for financial advisor advice. And I want to go through like 10 or 15 videos and get your take on the advice that they're giving and see like, is it BS? Is it not? So let him take a couple minutes and get a good algorithm with some advice going of short form content we can look at. More and more people are starting to become concerned about their plastic waste. That's why having a fun, refillable water bottle has become such a popular trend. So, let me introduce you to our official beverage sponsor of the Best podcast, Path, a sleek and completely recyclable aluminum water bottle that is also BPA free and refillable. Refilling your Path bottle not only reduces plastic waste, but also contributes to becoming carbon positive after only 4+ refills. Since 2015, Path has been on a mission to end single-use plastic. It's not about drastic changes. It's about simple lifestyle switches. By educating people and encouraging them to hashtag refill it, Path shows that every refill counts in the fight against plastic waste. It's a small step that can make a huge difference. You can find Path in over 55,000 retail stores worldwide, including stores like Whole Foods, Target, CVS, Sprouts, and many more. Path is also present in airports, gyms, schools, and has extended its reach to travel, fitness, national parks, hospitality, and healthcare sectors. To learn more, visit drinkpath.com or follow them on Instagram at Pathwater. Now, let's jump back into the episode. The relationship that you have with your clients, is it usually turn into a friendship or do you usually try and keep it more professional?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be rare in this instance, but I prefer to have some sort of friend level with them in the sense of like, you're telling me things you don't tell anybody else.
Yep.
That you only tell your spouse, or sometimes you don't even tell your spouse.
Yep.
And so I feel like in order for us to really work well together long term, we have to have some level of friendship. I know others like to keep it much further distance than that, but that's just the way that I feel good about having the relationship.
Yeah.
So I also let them understand, here's who I am, here's what I came from, here's my background, here's why I do this, here's who my family is. Like when we went to California, my wife and my son went with me. Yesterday morning, after I met with the client all day on Wednesday, we went and did some paddle boarding with him and his kids and his wife.
It's amazing.
And, so I think you have to have some level of that for the intimate nature of the way that I am working with them, knowing so much about them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think going back to my family's business and the root of how this whole podcast is here is taxes, but specifically tax problems. I would say 40%, maybe 50%, maybe a little bit lower. I'm just guessing here. Don't tell their spouse about the problems that they're having. Come into our office with stacks of unopened mail, love letters, as we call them, from the government. And so what's the first thing that we want to do? It's number one, we want to help you sleep better at night. Number two, build that trust. And I think that's what you're alluding to, because same with us, same with you. You're in charge of their finances. You're in charge of their future, to be honest with you. And that's a lot of weight on you. And if you guys have that mutual trust where you know they trust you and they know you trust them, that makes the relationship 100 times better, because if one party lacks trust, makes the whole thing not worth it. But when you build that friendship, you build that trust and bake that trust into it. And these are very emotional. And I think that's something that a lot of other financial advisors I have never heard talk about, the friendship emotional aspect to it, because this is someone's livelihood. And that's a lot of times the conversations I have with our team when it comes to taxes, because listen, our clientele, they need the hand holding, they need the help, they need the explanation. And sometimes you don't want to do that. It's repetitive. It's, trust me, I'm doing my job for you. But on the other hand, the client wants to know that they're taken care of. They want to feel that trust, and that trust should be earned. That trust should not be given. We should earn that trust, but that trust always comes together, because when it does, you can recognize it and you're aware of it and you're like, okay, I trust them, they trust me, and now we have a friendship out of it as well.
Yeah. I think, I'm asking these families, but when people ask me like, how many players do you work with, I always say families, because I'm not just working with the player.
Yeah.
I am working with their family, their immediate family. Sometimes they need me to talk to a sibling. They need me to talk to a parent.
You probably deliver some not good news sometimes of like, no.
Yeah. So, I'm serving families, and that's a lot different than just investing somebody's money.
Yeah.
And requires a different relationship. That is why I do it the way I do it. I want those types of relationships. I don't want to just be handed a pile of cash like we talked about.
Yeah.
I'll go figure out what to do with it. Let me know when we need to meet about it. Like, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
And so if you want that from an advisor, I'm not the guy for you. But if you want to really have somebody who's in it with you, in the trenches, in the huddle, for using a football term, like, that's the person that I'm going to be.
How often do you say no to onboarding clients?
I've said no in more times than I probably should for launching a business just a couple of years ago. But I knew if I took those clients on based on the questions they were asking and the things they wanted me to do, that it would suck my time a lot. And in the end, neither one of us would be happy with the outcome of it, because they weren't willing to go all in.
Yeah.
It was, hey, I need your help with this piece, but don't worry about that piece. And it's just not going to work.
Yeah. I think one of the cooler things, and Ben, are you ready for us too? Okay. I think this will be my last point. One of the cooler things I've ever seen was this is years and years ago, an all-state sales training. And they had, I forget who the speaker was on stage, but he was a sales, one of those coaches, and Allstate brought him in, and he's like, those clients, the ones that make you want to get in your bed and pull the covers up over your head and just forget about everything. He's like, fire them. Just fire them. Just be done with them.
Yeah.
Is this stress really worth it? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They struggle with the ability to say no because the business is there, they need the money, but the money does not outweigh the stress. I mean, the stress eats you alive, literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
And you do, Alex says this, I say, talk about him a lot, Alex Ramosi, but he says, like, you literally can wave a magic wand whenever you want. There's nobody that is holding a gun to your head that says you have to work with these people.
Yeah.
So wave the wand.
Yeah.
Get rid of them.
The one thing I'll say, I think that can be a pushback on that is when you work in an environment where you're doing volume with consumers, the reviews get impacted. And what happens when your reviews get impacted is then you start to lose traction in terms of SEO searches, right? So there's a whole domino effect, which I think is unfair to certain businesses, because sometimes the ability to say no is deteriorated and diminished because of the impact it would have on your overall business. So, the stress, the money, then you got to think about, okay, well, is this going to hurt me if they go and leave a negative review because I fired them, right? Because they have the choice to do that. And it is very hard, almost impossible to get a negative review taken down.
Yeah, and I think we won't get political on it, but it's like there's a lot of things in society today that unfortunately has created not as much freedom of speech in general, of like,
sad. You're
fearful if I say what I really want to say, that, this could come back to me, whether it's a review or whatever it is. It's just so... It's difficult right now to be as honest as I think we need to be in all aspects of society, not just about money.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is why, shout out to our sponsors, podcast presented by Brinks Armored Account, official beverage sponsor is Path. Both of these sponsors have instilled the trust in me where I have freedom of speech. I am not interested in doing business with someone that wants to control what I say. And there's times where I say things that people don't agree with. That's fine. I encourage, come on, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. I want to bring back the ability to agree to disagree. I want to bring back the ability to have friends that don't agree with your views, because that is just not something that's a common occurrence in today's world, to have that, right? And I actually do have my brother, some of my close friends do not share the same viewpoints that I have whatsoever, but we very much get along. We very much love each other, and we're able to put that aside because I'm entitled to my opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. And last thing, and then we'll go to this. Yeah. I had an Instagram story I posted maybe it was a little out there, right? Maybe I shouldn't have posted it. And I had someone tell me it was hate speech what I posted. Now, it was not hate speech. Maybe it was outrageous, but hate speech. I mean, I'm like, this is not hate speech. But you have people that just like, it's so crazy to even hear someone tell me that. And this is someone that I love. Like, I really respect this person and I love them. And I've known them for 15 years, maybe longer than that. And they're telling me this is hate speech. I'm like, come on, this is not hate speech. But then, sometimes that ability to agree to disagree, that's where it's so important, where it's like, okay, you see it as that, I don't. But there's other times where there's facts versus feelings. And those times, that's where I have to get a little, okay, let's take a couple days apart because these are your feelings, but these aren't my feelings. These are the facts I'm presenting, or vice versa. When someone comes at me, and that is one of the coolest things that I think happens to me today is when someone comes to me and is like, hey, here's this. Here's the proof of this is this. Here's why you're wrong. Great. All right. You changed my mind. You showed me why I was wrong, and I'm confident enough in myself to be like, yeah, I was wrong about that. I'm sorry. That you're right about that, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, we're going to get into this segment. Literally, this is why I love the long form. I just thought of this like 30 minutes ago, and I was waiting for the right time to say it. We have shorts. This is YouTube shorts of financial advice. And so we're going to throw on the headphones and we're going to have Dustin tell us if it's good, if it's bad, or, if
So I
it's...
got a variety here for us. A lot of these are viral clips, so it's information a lot of people are going to be seeing, but I kind of found some good ones and some maybe not so good ones. So we'll see.
All right, let's do it.
If you're thinking about hiring a financial advisor, watch this.
A financial advisor tells you they can help you, but they can't really do anything for it. There's only 3 variables in any financial plan. There's the amount of money that you save every month. There's the compound interest that you earn, but those 2 variables don't do anything on their own. Every financial plan is you investing in something that's getting interest over a long period of time. If you don't want to be old when you retire, you have to break free from that system and buy assets that give you income. When the income is greater than your expenses, then you're financially free. If you think your financial advisor is helping you, think about this. Can your financial advisor help you save or invest more money? No, that comes down to your income and your expenses. Can you earn more money or can you reduce your expenses? Can they help you get higher rates of return? Everybody's down right now in the stock market, so if they can, when are they going to start doing their job? So they can't really help you. And then number 3 is the amount of time that you invest. If you invest from age 25 to age 65, that's 40 years of saving and investing. If you retire at 65 and live to life expectancy of 78, you only get 13 years of freedom. You invested 40 years of time to get 13 years of freedom. Does that trade ever make sense?
So what do you think about that?
So it's hard to even understand what he's trying to get across. But
I was like, what's the takeaway?
He's just saying that, advisors don't matter because I think he's trying to angle you should go buy real estate is what I would venture to guess is his channel is, he's like, go buy hard assets that produce income because the stock market you can't control. But one of the things he said was right, which is what we said. Go save more money so you can invest it. But it doesn't mean you only can pick real estate because it produces income. Plenty of stocks over long periods of time and the stock market in general over a long period of time has produced great returns.
Yeah. And I want to point this out here before we go any further. This is a prime example of not doing your research after watching something. Like if you're 18 years old and you watch this, you might be like, okay, like these points seem valid.
Well, and he's even advocating that, hey, you're saving all this money to only live 13 years and enjoy it. So he's like, spend your money now to me. And I'm like, yes, you should enjoy life now. But like freedom doesn't only exist when you don't have a job, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, like freedom can exist while you have a job. We still live in America.
Yeah.
So.
And here's where if I were 18 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old, and I know nothing, and I watch this video, I would be like, who's this guy with the ripped off shirt, first of all? Like, who is this guy? And like, okay, I need to find out, like, does he have a LinkedIn? What does he do for a living, you know?
And here's a great piece of advice that I got from plenty of other smart people is if you're taking advice from people who are worth less than you, you're going to be worth less than you are today. If you take advice from people who are worth more than you, you're going to be worth more than you are today. These guys look like they're worth less than most of us.
I would agree. All right. I like this segment.
All right, up
No,
next.
Sharan, how much do you invest every month? Around 1 lakh per month. How, man? We both make 1.5 lakhs per month, but I'm only able to save 50,000 rupees per month. Ha ha! I think you're falling into the margin of safety trap. What's that? I'll tell you. So how much money do you realistically need per month? Around 50,000 per month. So then why don't you invest the remaining 1 lakh? Bro, some extra 50,000 I have to keep in my bank account, bro. Otherwise, some sudden expenses will come. I won't have any money. For example, last month I had to purchase this crazy night lamp projector, which makes my room look like outer space. I'll tell you later. Don't you see what's happening? It's economics 101. Supply of money creates demand. So what should I do then? So just keep a margin of safety of 10% every month. So in your case, it's around 5,000 rupees extra. And invest the remaining 95,000 rupees at the beginning of the month itself. Also have an emergency fund which covers 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. Bro, but night lamp? Okay, bro, show me what this is. This is like some chick magnet.
That's awesome. That's a great way to explain that. Like, you should save money for yourself first. So that's like the envelope system we talked about. So this is really good advice. Is most people think about, I'm going to spend all my money, whatever's left, I'm going to save that, right?
Yeah.
But really what he's saying is save first, then spend your money. And so that's really good advice in a very interesting way. Don't go buy the lamp, I guess.
Yeah, I actually have one of those. My girlfriend, of course, she's bought. Actually, maybe let's say she got it for free. I don't know. Someone sent it to her.
That one had like 8 million views.
Wow.
So that's
What is
why I
that?
wanted to pull that one up.
350,000 likes or 309?
309,000 likes, yeah.
That's amazing.
All right, here's a Grant Cardone clip.
No.
Billionaire booklet, okay, 44 pages. Promise you, regardless of where you are right now in your life, in debt, broke, no job, got a job, great job, you got a little bit of money, you got 100 grand put away, you got $1 million put away, or $10 million, I promise you, okay? This book will change the way you look at finances. It will teach you what the schools never did. The only reason anybody takes a job is to get a salary. And they want to make a difference. And you know and I know that the only way you can make a difference is if you have enough money to make a difference. So you got kids in your life, you got parents in your life, you got dreams in your life. They all take money, okay? The Millionaire Booklet's going to show you how to create new sources of income, how to have multiple flows of income, how to create a first primary income line that continues to expand and expand, and how to put what I call symbiotic flows of income on top of that.
I'm ready for this
So
one.
one of the reasons I chose that one is there's so many of these where they're specifically trying to sell something. So I feel like you could touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, Grant Cardone is trying to sell you something all the time.
Yeah.
So let's just keep that in mind.
But I can 10x my money.
Yeah. Oh. And, I will say that the one thing I do agree with that he said was, if you do want to make real impact, you do have to make money.
100%.
The one way to change your life and your community's lives, or whoever you want to, is to make money. So you do have to become successful in that
100%.
regard. Any book is not going to guarantee that you're successful. So I will say, I would caution against that. I would also say, jack of all, master of none. 7 income streams is not what you need to be targeting. You need to target your first income stream that makes you wildly successful, and just spend all of your time consistent, persistent on that one income stream.
Yeah.
Make that really successful. Get into a niche where you can dominate. Then from there, the additional income streams will just show themselves to you because they'll be a byproduct of what you're doing. So instead of listening to that point, go to Alex Hormozy's videos and listen to him. Type that in, like Alex Hormozy, multiple income streams, and he's got a great counter to that piece because 7 is just going to overwhelm you.
And with that being said, I will tell you, right? My family's eggs, for the most part, I don't want to say all in one basket, but taxes. That's it. We do a little bit of real estate, of
But
course.
all that other stuff you do is because first...
Of course. But my point in saying this is I've always viewed my role as diversifying what we're doing, talking about insurance, talking about marketing and certain things that we do, is being able to diversify. Had that not happened, I would not be in this position. I'm very self-aware of the position I am and why I'm in that position. I mean, this whole setup around us and this mobile studio we brought, I mean, this is probably maybe 15, 20 grand of equipment, if not more than that, that we travel with. And so, like you said, you need to make the money to then make the impact. And I think this is the thing too that I'll add on before we go on is if you're watching this, right, the way to get access to our short form content is we sell it to businesses so that their employees and their families can get access to this curriculum. However, if your business is not paying for it, we are pricing it at a point where it's easy to enter and it's easy entry in, because I'm not here to sell you a course. Like, none of these things are going to teach you. You're not going to be a millionaire off the stock market after listening to our episode.
Right.
But you're going to have the tools to then go and continue to learn. And it takes away the what's BS and what's not. And that's where, like, for a while I was like, do I even want to have a consumer facing end? Because I don't want to be like selling something.
Yeah.
But there's value to it if you price it correctly, because I'm not saying like, yeah, for $50 you can join. It's like very cheap and inexpensive to get this information, because that's the way it should be. But you know, it costs us money to get this out to everyone.
Right,
So that's
right.
a part of it too.
Yeah. Go read Think and Grow Rich instead of his book. It would be my recommendation.
All right, what do we got next? You got some good ones here, Ben.
This next one is Infinite Money Glitch Explained. This one also had like 8 million views.
No, the infinite money glitch, though, if you play roulette and you guess the number that's going to win every time, then you just win.
That is a proven strategy.
The infinite money glitch is real, and this guy made $300,000 and it was completely legal. He got an Amex card with 5% cash back and went to the grocery store, but instead of buying eggs and milk, he bought a $100 prepaid money card and then used it to buy a money order. But here's where things get crazy. He used this money in order to pay off his credit card, creating an infinite loop. And since he earned $5 cash back and the fee was $2, he could profit $3 every time. And since credit card rewards aren't taxable, the IRS couldn't stop him, but this does break your credit card agreement, so be careful.
460,000 likes.
Oh my God. Yes, this is illegal. You should not. You should not do it. It says it so clearly that you're not supposed to buy gift cards. Oh my God.
This guy, this whole video is like, he found the infinite money loop. And at the end, it's like, this is committing fraud.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is the infinite money loop. But this is the information that goes back to like,
I know. And somebody in the middle of nowhere is going to go out and sign up for an Amex card, not knowing you have to pay it off every month, by the way, and go out and do this. Like, because he couldn't even at least pick like a 0 interest rate credit card and try to do that. He picks an Amex card.
Ben, we're shutting down the podcast. We're going to get an Amex after this, and we're just going to do the infinite money loop.
Great plan.
$2, by the way. Every transaction gives you $2.
Funny. All right. Up next, one of these street interviews, you know.
Yeah.
How much do you make per year?
I'm in sales, so roughly about 150.
Is there any advice you could give to someone make the same amount of money you're making?
If you're young, live at home as long as you can. Save your money, get roommates. Don't go out and blow your money on stupid things to look cool because you're young, and that's the way like social media comes across.
Cut off quicker than I expected there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what she said at the latter half. Like, don't go buy all that stupid stuff to keep up with the Joneses, which is hard to do. I get it, but you really should try not to do it. But the staying at home part, you know, eventually go get your own place.
I agree. I think you need to get out.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to it looks like she might be in New York. So maybe 150,000 she can't afford, which is real. Like, you might not be able to afford an apartment, but yeah, I think she's right. Don't buy the stupid stuff. There's plenty of ways to look nice that don't always cost you a whole bunch of money.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say. Again, transparent, being vulnerable, having spent godly amounts of money on stupid things, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, every time I've done that, because nobody's perfect. I look up like the next day and I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
It just was like, I didn't get what I thought I wanted to get out of it. It just didn't work out in my favor. And versus, you know, when you save, and this is where persistence does pay off. It just takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
But you do feel great. Like we talked earlier about watches. Like when you save up for a watch and then you go buy it, you feel a lot better than those times that you maybe bought the watch on your credit card, you're like, oh man, I got to pay this off at some point in time. So that's why people who talk about watches a lot say, don't do that. Just wait until you've saved the money, because you'll feel a whole lot better wearing it.
So I think that goes to say with a lot of people too, the last part I'll add, look at these certain things, especially watches, that like, okay, I can get my money out of it, right? And I can sell the watch and get it back out. Don't think about it like that. Like, these are not assets you're buying, you know? Like, people look at shoes like, oh, I could resell them. Like, okay, but who's going to, you know.
Then you'll never wear them. You'll never enjoy them. So why bother?
Exactly. So that's what I would say to that. You got one more for us? Let's do one more.
What do the most successful people out there have in common with McDonald's? What they have in common is real estate. See, most people think McDonald's is a fast food place, but it's not. It's actually a real estate company, because they own the best land on the most busiest corners out there. The most successful people, they buy commercial buildings, and that allows them to have incredible returns when they're in great locations. And if you're interested in investing in commercial real estate, DM me commercial real estate, and we'll talk to you about how you can create passive income through commercial real estate, like some of the wealthiest people in the world.
I'm not even watching the rest of this.
Yeah, DM me and I'll get you into commercial real estate. This is probably the most common thing that's on the internet, is about real estate and how to make more money. Look, you can make a lot of money in real estate, and it probably should be a part of most people's portfolio, but it's not the only way to make money. And I can tell you that the $1 billion family that I worked with didn't make their money on real estate. Like, they didn't own real estate. They owned a business that actually, they leased all of their buildings. So you don't have to own real estate to make a lot of money.
I agree.
It is a great way to increase your money, because it creates a hard asset that you can use. But yeah, everybody wants to default to real estate. And then, by the way, interest rates are horrendous right now.
Right.
By the way, we're about to probably have we're in the process of going through a commercial real estate crash. So yeah, don't listen to guys. Don't DM guys on Instagram or TikTok to learn about how to invest in commercial real estate.
Should we do one more?
We could do one more. Let's do one more.
All right, this is for the younger generation, age 13 to 17. I see a lot of
the perfect. See, I like that. I like to end on that one.
You know, how to start making money in high school, stuff like that.
Passa em mim, sarra em mim, joga pouquinho de buceta pra mim. Passa em mim, sarra em mim, joga pouquinho de buceta pra mim. Passa em mim, 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 passa em mim.
What was the last one? Yeah, what was the last one?
SMMA.
What does that stand for even?
Shows our age.
Social media marketing agency.
It's got to be,
Yeah.
Maybe. Social media marketing agency.
4 ways to get rich in 2023 if you're 13 to 17. I mean, I could get behind YouTube. Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
That's when he started, was 13. So like, you can do it, but you have to remember, anybody who follows him, go back and watch any of the videos where he like really talk, or there's a documentary now actually on Netflix, I think it was, where you can like see his history of how he got to where he is. So I can get behind YouTube for sure, but Forex trading, no. Definitely not. You're not going to go currency trade 13 to 17 with
leverage.
Like on
crazy
margin.
Leverage.
On margin. No, I can't get behind that. But YouTube, I think like if you've got something you're passionate about and you want to just start, it's the just getting started. Just hit record and start putting stuff out there. I mean, Mr. Beast is worth, who knows, $1 billion, someplace around there at this point in time.
Now he's got bad things going on though.
Well, he's I don't know.
I don't know what's going on. I just know that there's something bad brewing.
Well, his chocolate alone is worth like $250 million. So if anything were to happen to YouTube, he'd be fine.
But no, I think, listen, there is a lot of different ways to produce income. There's a lot of different ways to get to financial freedom. It's just, again, patience and consistency are going to get you there. And I think everyone needs to take away from this episode that you need to have a trusted person in your life that is going to, number one, be able to tell you no. Number one, be able to help you to achieve certain goals or dreams that you have. And number three, and most importantly to me, be able to truly be an expert on that topic. This is not something they do on the side. This is not part-time. This is what they do every day, in and out. This is what they know. And to go to that person, and I think you are that person for a lot of people. So it really stands true to who you are and the kind of person you are. And for all the young listeners out there, or even if you're older and you're just starting to gain some momentum, again, that's all I can really say today is like, stay consistent and be patient.
Yeah. And I would just add, work with someone who you connect with on some meaningful level and see eye to eye on a lot of things, and make sure that their incentives, as in how they're paid, align with what you need.
Yeah.
Is there's nothing wrong with how somebody's compensated. Just make sure it aligns with what you need and what your goals are. So, yeah.
Well, it looks like I have to go do some Forex trading, guys. No, but Dustin, seriously, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And I actually want to add in one thing, because maybe it's a little bit of a teaser. One of the next couple episodes we have coming up is with someone that is an internet sensation all over the world. And they are able to really break down sort of how they got into it, staying, again, consistent. I didn't even mean to pull that out, but staying consistent, continually posting. So I think when we look at, right, for ours, like, where does the young generation want to be? What's a focus point? And it is, everyone wants to be a YouTuber or influencer. That is what people want to do. I get why they want to do it. It looks fun. I will say there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that people don't realize. So that's my little like tease into some next episodes that are coming up. But thank you so much. Will you give out your contact information or any ways people can reach you?
Yeah, a great place to go is the website. First of all, I got some great content on there. You can learn more about me on there. It's teampwm.com, and my email is deldridge@teampwm.com.
Spell your last name for people.
Yeah,
just
ELDRIDGE.
There you go.
So yeah, happy to help, especially any athlete in any sport, at any stage of your career, at college or after, here to be a resource if you're looking for the type of relationship that has been talked about in this, or the education we talked about in the short form.
Yeah, no, and I will say again, thank you, because you're a busy guy. You deal with hundreds of millions of dollars on a daily basis, billions of dollars as well. And for you to carve out 6 hours of time during the weekday for us to come in your office to record this podcast really means a lot to me. Like, I literally have goosebumps right now, because it really it shows the kind of person you are. And I hope that resonates with the audience as well, and they're able to absorb a lot of what we talks about today. So thanks so much, Dustin.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, everyone.